No problem. So let's call to order and get a roll call.
Mr. DeFilia,
Here.
Mr. Duffy,
Here.
Dr. Fisher,
Here.
Ms. Close,
Here.
Mr. Siano,
Here.
Mr. Weinstein,
Here.
Chairman DeBenedetto. Okay,
All right, let's salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The notice requirements of the open public meeting law for this meeting have been satisfied. A copy of the notice having been sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Coaster and filed in the office of the Township Clerk on July 27th, 2020. Board policy: no new cases will be started after 10:30 p.m. and no new testimony taken after 11 p.m. Notice: all meetings will be video and audio taped and shown on the Township of Ocean's Community Cable Channel, Channel 22 on Verizon Fios, and Channel 77 on Cablevision. So I guess we're going to start here with the reorganization.
That's right, Mr. Chair. The first item is to swear in members for a new term. The only member of the committee who has a new appointment is Councilman Dr. Dave Fisher. Councilman, I understand that you have the oath in front of you. Is that correct?
I do.
Would you kindly raise your right hand, please? And now will you read the oath to the public, please?
I, David Fisher, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state, under the authority of the people. I do further solemnly swear that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of a Class 3 member of the Township of Ocean Planning Board according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you, and welcome to a new term.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard again. Mr. Chairman, now we go into elections. Of course, for the members of the public, Mr. Siano is the vice chair of the board. The chairman is unable to be with us tonight. And nevertheless, we certainly can go through all the officers. There's two of them for vote. Is there a motion from a member of the board for chairman for the upcoming year?
I motion for Dr. DeBenedetto.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any other nominations for chairman? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations. Amy, could you please do a roll call?
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Ms. Close,
Yes.
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Congratulations to Dr.
Yes.
Benedetto. Now, Mr. Chairman for the evening, I know we've had some dialogue about this position. I understand that for right now, you'll continue to be the vice chair. There may be a different nomination, which we can do in another time. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, now we officially turn it over to you for the evening. Mr. Siano, if you like, I can continue to assist with this, or you could just take over yourself. Which would you rather?
Go ahead. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
All right, very good. The next item is a standard issue or for a reorganization. You have to approve the meeting dates. Members of the board, you will have had an opportunity, I'm sure, to look at the dates. Is there a motion to approve the list?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Ms. Close,
yes,
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Very
Great.
good. Dealing with the appointment of the professionals, it's my understanding that at the present time, the appointments for attorney and the engineer will only be for 60 days, subject to an RFP. In terms of the planner, that position is not for 60 days. That will be for a year.
No, Sandy, that will run through the end of the year.
Okay.
Jim Higgins' contract was also inclusive of the master plan. That's why it runs through the end of the
Okay.
year.
So in terms of the documents that have been provided to you, they would be amended so that the contract proposal for the planning board attorney is changed from 1 year to 60 days. The contract for the engineer is likewise changed from 1 year to 60 days. And the contract for Mr. Higgins is for the calendar year ending December 31, 2021. Is that fair to say, Mr. Kirk?
The planning board engineer's contract is already in place, so we wouldn't be voting on that. And you can
So there's no vote
correct.
for at all. So that's being removed from the list of appointments.
Yes.
I would suggest that is that appointment as a township position or the board position?
If the board would like to appoint for till the end of the year, that's fine also. Either one is fine. It's not a township or planning board.
What is your is your desire?
I would say you would to err on the side of caution and to appoint him to the end of the year.
Okay, very good. So we will have 3 appointments along the lines as amended. And so we could either handle them separately, which is normally what we do. So I suggest we go back to that. Is there a motion to appoint myself as the planning board attorney for a term of 60 days from presumably July 1, 2022?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
yes,
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
All right, very good. Now, moving back to the agenda item 6. This is an amended motion to appoint the planner, Mr. Higgins, for a term that will end December 31, 2021. Is there a motion to so approve?
I motion to approve.
I'll
Second?
second. I'll
Roll
second.
call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
yes,
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr.
Item number
Weinstein.
7.
Yes.
Item number 7 back on the agenda. Is there a motion to appoint the planning board engineer? That's a new appointment. This is for CME, and we have Mr. Matlack on the phone. He is the specific designated member of that firm as our new board engineer. Again, that term will be for 60 days from July 1, 2021. Is there a motion to so appoint?
I motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
yes,
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Very good. Number 8 on the agenda for reorganization is the appointment of the planning board secretary. That will be for 1 year from July 1, 2021. Is there a motion to so appoint?
I'll motion.
A second.
I'll
please.
second.
A roll call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
Yes.
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Very good. And now going to the swearing in ceremonies that we usually have. For those of you who are veterans, I think that includes everybody here. When we swear in our board planner and engineer who testified during the course of the year, we have them swear that the testimony shall be under oath throughout the year. Mr. Higgins is not here tonight, so at the next meeting, he will go through the oath of public office and execute his document. Welcome, Bennett Matlock. I don't see you on the screen, but I know you're here, correct?
I'm here, thank you.
Oh, welcome. How are you?
Thank you.
I had the pleasure of talking to Ben for the very first time the other week. I can assure you that he's a highly regarded professional and he's doing a fine job catching up with matters. He will be a credit for the next 60 days of his term. And so, Mr. Matlock, do you happen to have a written oath that's part of the agenda
I do not.
packet? You do not. Okay. I did hear you don't have it, right?
No, I don't have it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through it with you. Okay, so did you raise your right hand, please?
All right.
So I, Bennett Matlock,
I, Bennett Matlack,
PE on behalf of CME Engineering,
PE on behalf of CME Engineering,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state,
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that all testimony that I shall provide
and that all testimony that I shall provide
during all hearings throughout my term
during all hearings throughout my term
shall be under oath
shall be under oath,
and therefore will be under a legal obligation
and therefore will be under a legal obligation
to speak the truth at all times.
to speak the truth at all times.
I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially, and justly perform
impartially, and justly perform
all the duties of the Township of Ocean Planning Board Engineer
all the duties of the Township of Ocean Planning Board Engineer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And again, the appointment is effective July 1, 2021 for the 60-day term, as I indicated. You will receive from the township a written oath that you will sign, please, and send it in the normal course. And again, welcome and thank you for your service.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, now we go back.
Board, and I look forward to working with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, we are done with the reorganization unless you or members of the board have anything else to add. And if not, then we can have a motion to adjourn the reorganization meeting and then proceed to the rest of the agenda.
Okay, I agree with that. So let's adjourn. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Please.
Okay.
Roll call vote, please. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
yes,
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
yes,
Mr. Siano,
yes,
Mr. Weinstein.
yes,
Returning to the agenda, there is one case that's being carried to the August 23, 2021 meeting. That's a Roosevelt Avenue Properties LLC, Block 22, lots 11.12 and 22. That's located on Roosevelt Avenue in Ocean, of course. Mr. Kirk, is it fair to say that this is being carried without the need of additional notice?
It is.
Thank you. Now we have the discussion on an amendment of the land development ordinance. That's number 21. I'd like to emphasize as we talk about this that our review is very limited. This is somewhat typical in the fact that periodically we are asked to review proposed ordinances that are then voted on by the Township Committee. The only purpose for our review tonight is to make a determination as to whether or not the proposed ordinance is consistent with the master plan. And that's it. And then, of course, Councilman Fisher and the members of the council will then deliberate substantively on it. Now, does everybody have a copy of the report that Mr. Higgins had provided to us? I know that Ms. Stewart had resent it out today. It is a very short one. Mr. Chairman, with your concurrence, I'm going to read this on the record. And again, as Mr. Higgins had indicated when we were talking about a quorum at the July 26th session, that he didn't feel it was necessary for him to be here. I can concur with that if as long as everybody's comfortable. I'm just going to read this. We can have a dialogue on it and then we'll have a typical vote. Hearing no comments, let me go to the memo, which would be most beneficial for members of the public to hear. This is dated July 26, 2021. Again, it's from our planning consultant, James W. Higgins. And he states the following: the Township Council has introduced ordinance 2362, which allows cannabis cultivators, cannabis manufacturers, cannabis distributors, and cannabis wholesalers to be permitted in the I-1 zone south of Deal Road, provided that they are properly licensed by the state. It prohibits retail sales or delivery of cannabis in this zone or in any zone in the township. The permitted uses are all considered to be light industrial uses and are consistent with the master plan designation of this I-1 zone for light industrial office use. End of report. And again, our limited function is to determine whether or not to agree with the recommendations and the report of Mr. Higgins. If that is the case, then we can offer a motion to accept the recommendations of Mr. Higgins' report, which will then be forwarded to the council for the determination that takes place under the municipal land use law and under the state statutes dealing with amendments to ordinances. Are there any comments or questions with regards to the issue at hand?
Sandy, when you talk south of Deal Road, where exactly are we talking about?
Well, Estelle, I'm going to yield to Mr. Kirk on this because I'm not cognizant of what Jim meant when he stated that.
Okay,
It's back in the industrial zone. Okay, that's the only area that'll be permitted to have in the entire township. That's what it's being. I believe there's a state law coming up where if some restrictions are not put in place, that it could be throughout the town in any commercial area. So we've designated the industrial area as the area in which to cultivate, for the wholesalers alone.
Ron, can I
Is that
speak on
answer-
that for a second?
Yep.
So here's what happened is the legislator approved the whole marijuana issue. And what happened was they give it to each township to decide where they want to zone this sort of thing, what they want to allow. If the township does not do anything, then this place turns into the Wild West, and you can have all kinds of businesses all over the township. So we as a council decided to narrow the scope of what we were going to allow. So it's going to be basically manufacturing, cultivation, and distribution on a wholesale level, no retail and no delivery services. And we decided that we wanted to have this into the industrial zone, get it out of the Route 35 corridor. So it's basically just a manufacturing business. It'll have jobs that are, believe it or not, supposed to be union jobs. So it could be a win for the township, but once again, it's also a big if. But the biggest thing that if we do nothing, then it turns into quite a problem. So that's why we're having this vote tonight.
Great explanation, Dr. Fisher. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I just have a quick question. So it's only the I-1 zone south of Deal Road, not the I-1 in the northern part of town?
Yeah, the I-1 south of Deal Road.
Okay.
I mean, I would just say, what's the point of having a legal substance if you can't buy it or have it delivered to your house? So I'll leave it there. I think you guys are selling this short, but it's a step in the right direction, I guess.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, do you have a motion to recommend and support the opinion of our planner that the proposed ordinance is consistent, or at least substantially consistent with the master plan?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
Yes.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
Yes.
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
It passes. Very good. Mr. Chairman, now we go to the hearing for the benefit of the public. This is in fact a special meeting of the Ocean Township Planning Board on July 26th, I believe. This matter was going to be heard. We did not have a quorum at that time, and thus there was a consensus that we would have a meeting on this date. Ms. Krimko, would you enter your appearance, please?
Certainly. Jennifer Krimko on behalf of the applicant.
And you're ready to proceed, of course. You have all your witnesses
Yes.
available.
I
I'd
am.
suggest that you give a quick summary as to who you plan to call tonight.
Well, what I'd like to do if I can, so again, thank you, Jennifer Krimko, law firm Vansel Grimm and Aaron, here on behalf of the applicant. As this board is aware, it recently approved an Amazon last stop distribution center in what is a portion of the former Sears in the Seaview Square shopping center that those of us who've been here our whole lives can still call in our heads the Seaview Square Mall. And that building and the parking attendant to it is primarily on lot 2 of the lots, but the center itself is consisting of lots 1 and 2. And the application here before you is to develop a vacant portion of the existing lot 1 to allow for a separate parking area for the delivery vans, which you heard testimony about the first time around. And what this will do, it will, as you'll hear through the testimony, it will open up the parking field adjacent to the building, and it will be, as was submitted by in a summary, limited to only employees. There will be no there will be no members of the public utilizing that lot. Because this site, as you're aware, is over a former landfill and is regulated by the DEP, Mr. Matlack in his report rightfully raised some issues and concerns relative to the construction and how that was going to be handled. So as a result, who I have here tonight is Patrick Lynham. He is the professional engineer. He'll be offering the testimonies to the proposed work that we are doing. He will give the operational testimony consistent with the summary submission as to the use of the lot. I also have with us Chris Esposito from Environmental Logic, who is the LSRP who is charged with overseeing and enforcing the DEP regulations as to the construction within this restricted area. What my intention to do is have Patrick give the lion's share of the testimony, since it is primarily within his bailiwick, and then have Chris here to answer any questions that the board members may have specifically, and the public may have specifically, as to how certain things will be handled. So those are the two witnesses I intend to present. So I would like.
Sandy, can I ask a question before we start this?
Yes.
Would it be okay?
Sure.
I just don't understand, why was this not part of the original plan and approval?
Okay.
Like, why is this being considered now, and how does it relate to anything that we approved before?
Okay,
Great question.
I can answer that. So the first reason is that the original approval, if you may remember, was really with regard to fully developed portions of the property. There were little site changes and little to no stormwater management required, and really no disturbance of any areas that weren't previously disturbed. In order to get Amazon in, and in order to get them functioning in the building and pull the permits, it was decided, and this was actually done in concert in technical review meetings with the board's professionals, as well as with Ron, to pursue the building conversion in the first instance, and then return to the board once the plans were fully engineered for the expansion of this parking lot. So it was a matter of timing of not having the plans prepared or done. What I would ask is that you allow us to make our presentation so you can get an understanding as to how the lots will function, or how this improvement will function in conjunction with the previously approved portion. And then if you have any questions, obviously we're here to answer them.
Well, I guess the thing I'm trying to understand more specifically is what happens if we don't, like, how does this relate to if this doesn't fit into an environmental plan of digging this area up? What happens if what does that mean to everything?
Well, I think, as you're going to hear, we don't need any variance relief, and we're addressing all of the environmental concerns that would be raised by the DEP, who is the regulating authority as it relates to this. This is a permitted use in a zone where it's permitted, and it's a matter of whether or not we meet the site plan requirements.
Okay. So, all right. Okay.
We're not asking
so
for
right now
anything. We're not asking for anything we're not entitled to do. What we are here to do is to give you a sense of comfort with regard to the items that you do regulate, and that is stormwater management. And then obviously, to the extent that you want to be made comfortable with the construction process and the compliance with the DEP regulations, that's why I have the LSRP here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Right, thanks.
with that in mind, the normal process, as Ms. Krimko is very well aware of, is to have our planner and the engineer either paraphrase or sometimes even read their reports. Mr. Higgins, of course, is not here. My general understanding was that he was comfortable that the issues were more engineering than not, if you will. I would suggest that I could read his report on the record, especially to highlight and to focus the issues in for the board. And then we have our new engineer, and then what usually happens is that then the engineer paraphrases or reads his report, and then we go to the testimony to focus in on the issues.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brown. I thought that the board changed their procedure as to that when they adopted their rules and regulations, and in more complex matters that the applicant was going to present. I mean, in this particular case, for example, we can comply with just about everything in the CME letter. So I'm not sure you know,
Well,
a lot of it will be addressed through testimony. I thought, Ron, and if I'm wrong, let me know. I thought that you changed your process.
We have changed our process, and it seemed to always go back to the original way of, you know, the planner reading the report in, and then the engineer. You know, I'll leave it to the chair as to how they would like to proceed.
And the reason I say that is I think a lot of what's in those reports become moot once we make our presentation.
Mr. Chairman, it's up to your discretion. Pete?
Mr.
Peter?
Siano's video is missing, so I don't know if.
Let me see here. I see that Peter is listed as being on. Peter, can you hear us?
Okay, I think we have no choice but to take a few minutes of a pause here to get Mr. Ciano back online.
I agree. Does anybody have Mr. Ciano's number offhand to contact him?
We'll be taking care of that immediately.
Thank you. While we're waiting here, Ms. Krimko, depending on which way the chair wants to proceed, we'll certainly have your witnesses sworn in shortly. Would you agree we'll have your witnesses sworn in at the same time, although obviously you'll determine.
I would prefer Mr. Brown to do it individually because one of my witnesses has not appeared here before and I'd like to take a moment for him to qualify himself.
Very good. All right, that's fine. Amy, are you on? Hello?
I am.
Amy, how many people who are members of the planning board are on at the present time, if you know?
Looks like 1, 2, 3. 5.
Does that include Mr. Ciano or not?
No, he's not on at the moment.
I just
So we
tried.
have 5 on, not including Mr. Ciano?
Yeah.
Mr. Kirk, any luck with Mr. Ciano?
I couldn't get through to him on the phone. I did to just text him.
Mr. Ciano just texted me. He said his computer crashed and he will be joining momentarily.
Thank you. So I would suggest we have another roll call vote when Mr. Ciano gets back on, just to be careful about the quorum issue.
I keep forgetting about Mr. Weinstein, but he's on here. So there's 5, 6 now.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
All right, Ms. Ciano, abundance of caution, I suggest Amy call the roll of the board members, make sure we have who we think we have on. Amy, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. DeFilia,
Still here.
Mr. Duffy,
Here.
Dr. Fisher. You there?
He's on mute.
Dr. Fisher, you're on mute.
Yes, I am. I'm here.
This is close. Close. No.
She's on mute.
She's on. Estelle, you have to unmute yourself. Estelle? You got to unmute yourself.
There we go.
All right, very good. All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure when you went offline, so let me just summarize the fact that it's up to you to make a decision right now. Did you hear that we talked about whether or not we should have the reports read or paraphrased by the professionals? I would presumably read or paraphrase Mr. Higgins' report. Our counsel for the applicant has suggested that in light of the particular circumstances that she would rather proceed with her proofs. It's up to you. You have the discretion to make that call.
Let's keep it the way we normally do it and just have our experts paraphrase,
Okay.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Brown, I'm sorry, did we not check on Mr. Weinstein on the roll call?
You did not. At least Ed's looking out for me. Holy cow.
Yeah, or
I just heard Estelle, I'm here, so yes, and then Mr. Weinstein.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having my back.
Yeah, I do what I can for my other alternate members.
Yeah, I thought my computer was acting up again. It's a week old. That's what's sad about it. Okay. So let's go to our experts real quick.
Because Mr. Higgins is not here, I suggest that we start tonight with Mr. Matlock going through his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I have a rather lengthy report, but it mostly references the previous report done by Mr. Fitzgerald. Tonight, we're going to be looking for some testimony, mostly regarding environmental. We want to hear about the existing landfill, the major disruption permit that will be required by the NJDEP, and the procedures and methods that the applicant is going to do to ensure that that stormwater runoff is protected both during construction and after construction is complete, as well as where the material that's excavated, where is that going? How is that going to be handled? And I know the applicant has their environmental engineer here to talk about that, and I know Mr. Lynham is prepared to talk about a lot of this as well. I think that's a good summary of my report, and I'll leave it to the applicant to provide the proofs.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would paraphrase Mr. Higgins' report, and I do realize that Ms. Kremko is indicating that through testimony, she'll provide nuts and bolts facts. So as Mr. Higgins indicates, this application regards the proposal to construct 162 space parking area for delivery vans located across the ring road from the approved Amazon Fulfillment Center. Ms. Kremko will provide testimony through the witnesses dealing with the details about the aisles, the number of vans, the delivery schedule, swing spaces, the shifts involved. Jim indicates that the plan also indicates that a separate location on the site will be used as a stockpile area. The applicant needs to provide testimony regarding the use and maintenance of this area, which the witness will get into. The variances are set forth on the second of 3 pages of the report. We have the standard type of soil removal variance. Jim indicates that he defers to the board engineer with regards to the impacts of the soil removal that's proposed. So keep that in mind when you hear the testimony. Minimum number of parking stalls. Based on the applicant engineer's calculations, the ordinance requires 4,285 parking spaces for the entire site, and a total of 4,084 parking spaces exist on the site at this time. The proposed development does not include any building space and does not change the required parking. While the proposed development provides an additional 162 parking spaces, the reality is that it does not change the availability of parking on the site. The purpose of this parking area is to provide an area for parking for the delivery vans and van drivers' cars. It does not relate to all the other areas in the site, either with regards to the provision of parking or creation of new demand for parking. As such, it does not impact in any way the available parking or need for parking on the remainder of the site. As such, it's Jim's opinion that the available parking on the site does not change, and while required, the variance requested is a technicality. Planting diamonds, the ordinance requires planting diamonds every 7 parking spaces in the parking areas. Mr. Higgins notes that it's become apparent that the planting diamonds concept does not work well and that they are more of a hindrance than a benefit, since plants do not grow well in them and they interfere with snow removal. The applicant has provided substantial landscaping on the perimeter and interior of the parking area that is superior to plantings in 4x4 planting diamonds. Next, fence wall height. The ordinance limits the combined height of any fence/wall to 6 feet. The plan proposes a combined height of the fence wall that varies with a maximum height of approximately 21 feet. And then in parentheses, 4-foot fence and 17-foot high wall. The applicant should provide testimony as to the reasons for the proposed wall height. The additional 4-foot fence is necessary for safety purposes. With regards to the impact, the wall faces a large inventory storage area of the adjacent auto dealership and is adequately screened. There's one design waiver here. Underground sprinkler system. The ordinance requires that all landscape areas be served by an underground sprinkler system. The application states that the landscaping in the area will be served by such a system, but that the proposed stockpile will not be sprinklered. And he sets forth some thoughts here, but I'm sure Ms. Krimko's experts are going to address that. And so that is the end of the report as submitted. Back to you, Mr. Chair, and presumably back to Ms. Krimko.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. My first I'd like to move some items into evidence if I could. A1 is the site plan prepared by Colliers Engineering, and it is revised through July 16th, 2021. A2 is the limited topographic survey prepared by Colliers Engineering dated July 13th, 2021. And Sandy, just for your ease of reference, I'm going down the CME letter.
Yeah, that's fine.
A3 is the stormwater management report prepared by Colliers dated May 13th and revised through July 16th, 2021. A4 is part of the record. I'm not moving that in. I'm sorry, A4 would be the summary report of groundwater exploration prepared by Colliers Engineering dated July 7th, 2021, unrevised. A5 is the environmental review and monitoring plan prepared by Environmental Logic LLC dated July 2021. And I think that's the rest of it are not plans that we're going to rely on. So I think that's the sum and substance of it. So I'd like to introduce Patrick Lynham. He is a licensed professional engineer and planner. He was qualified as same at the last hearing, and we'd submit him as that at this hearing.
Mr. Lyman, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
All right, and Amy, if I could ask to please have my screen share so I can bring up the site plan.
Ms. Krimko, just to be technically correct, this is a new hearing dealing with the parking lot, right? I know Mr. Lyman has testified here before.
No,
but,
that correct, which is why we had him sworn in. I was indicating that the board has previously accepted him in the past, but if they would like me to go through his qualifications again, I'm happy to.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, will the board accept Mr. Lyman's credentials as he has testified before, and you're submitting him as a professional engineer, is that correct?
And
Yes.
planner.
Yes.
And planner?
Thank you. Yeah, Patrick, and planner too, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The
Thank
chairman's
you.
indicated that that's acceptable, and he can testify as those expertises permit.
Okay, so Patrick, and I'm calling up on the screen now, what we moved into evidence is A1, and these are the site plans that your office prepared. And if you want to tell me which sheet to put up, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk the board through first what we're proposing. We'll then go through the summary of operations and how it will work and function in relation to the Amazon Fulfillment Center. And then we'll go over, I think, what is the most important for everybody here, and that is how the construction will occur in light of the environmentally regulated lands on which we're proposing this. So which page would you like me to start with?
Okay, well, that's the overall dimension plan, so we could start there. So just some background, the property is located at 2301 Highway 66, known as the Seaview Square Shopping Center. It consists of tax lots 1 and 2 in block 141. It contains 127 acres and contains frontage along Route 18 to the west, Route 66 to the south, Route 35 to the east, as well as the access to Sunset Avenue to the north. The property is located within the C4 regional commercial zone, in which the existing uses, the retail shopping center and retail distribution center, are permitted uses. The proposed parking lot will be used in conjunction with the retail distribution center, as mentioned before. This application is limited to the parking lot on what we call the kidney-shaped parcel. And if you could zoom in, Jennifer, it's or there you go. That is what we're calling the kidney-shaped parcel. And we're also proposing to stockpile the material, the earthwork. If you want to go to the next page, Jennifer, that should be the grading plan. And you can see to the northwest, the triangle portion, which we call it, of the lot. And you can see there's that's where we're transporting the material underneath this kidney portion and into a stockpile area.
Okay, and this is already used for that purpose, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, and just to orient everybody and looking at the, let me, if you don't mind, let me go back to the overall plan. Where the cursor is right now is where the prior Sears, where the current retail fulfillment center is proposed. That's the building. This is the kidney-shaped lot. This is the Costco where my cursor is. And is this the triangular piece we're talking about?
Correct.
Okay, just to orient it. And so then this is the entrance off of Sunset Avenue in, and this is the current road that goes around the center.
Correct.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure everybody else understood.
All right, I guess we can zoom into the proposed improvements. Yeah, that's a good plan. So the applicant is proposing to construct 162 parking spaces to be used exclusively for the employees of the recently approved distribution center across the ring road. The parking lot would be used by the facility's 132 delivery vans and the personal vehicles of employees who drive them. So just to get in real quick of the quick operations of the parking lot. The delivery, since there's 162 proposed spaces and there's 132, that's a delta of 30 spaces that would always be open throughout the operating hours. So to just get into the operations, the delivery vans will arrive in 4 shifts of 24 drivers. So they arrive at 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30, and 11 a.m. And so they would come in shifts, and they would use up the 24 of the 30 empty spaces for their personal vehicles. And then they would take the vans, and then they would leave to go pick up their load, which is across the ring road. And then they would leave and go distribute the packages to everybody else. And then they come back in the same shifts, within half an hour shifts. And the typical work day is 8 hours. Obviously that varies, could get up to 10 hours, but for the most part, they come back in the same shifts that they arrived. So there will always be available parking to park the personal vehicles.
Well, Patrick, we submitted as part of our application a summary of parking lot operations and limitations. And I'm intimately familiar with how this works, and I'm a little bit confused by the way that you explained it. So I just want to go through and clarify it.
Okay.
So there's 162 spaces, and the company has 132 vans. So when all the vans are parked there overnight, there'll be 30 empty parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the employees work in shifts of 24 delivery vans per shift.
Correct.
And what would happen is the 24 delivery van drivers would come to work at the beginning of their shift. They would park their personal cars in one of the 30 spots, and then they would go into their delivery van that they've been assigned and drive off and start their day. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when that shift is done, then the next shift of 24 employees, it would be timed, and there'd be the next shift. So at any given time, there's always going to be an excess of parking. And when the vans leave with the employees from that shift, they're opening up 24 new spaces.
Correct.
So there will always be 30 empty parking spaces within this parking lot. So it will actually work as rolling shifts, and the only vehicles that will be utilizing it will be the personal vehicles of the employees, and then they would take the vans. And then when they brought the vans back, they would park it in an empty spot and take their car, thereby again overnight leaving the 30 vacant spaces.
Correct.
Okay. And the employees would never at any time walk from this parking lot over to the main building. It would always be done, either they'd be dropping off their car and picking up their van, or dropping off their van and picking up their car.
That is correct.
Okay. And that's why it was indicated that although we're adding 162 parking spaces, reducing the overall variance, we're not really providing any parking for the general public. This would be limited only to employees of the Amazon Retail Distribution Center.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm sorry. So let's keep going with regard to the construction.
Yes, so that's the bulk of it. Besides the stormwater, and we're providing lighting that conforms to the ordinance. We're also proposing landscaping that complies with the ordinance, including the compensatory. We're compensating for all the trees that we're removing within the kidney parcel itself. So lighting, landscaping are covered. So the proposed development includes retaining walls, and Jennifer, if you want to go down to the next plan, the grading plan.
This one right here?
Go back up, sorry. There you go. So you want to zoom into the kidney parcel?
Yep.
Because where our walls are.
Okay,
Okay, so the development includes retaining walls and grade changes up to 17 feet along the eastern property line, and along there, and then it curves back towards the west and goes down south. So that's where the retaining wall lies, and you could see by existing the lighter contours underneath that there is significant topo relief currently. And the
when you say topo relief, you just mean slope.
slope, yes, correct.
Okay,
A slope going, and you can see it's going towards the lot 7.01. That's the car dealership.
okay, so the walls that we're proposing, they're not gonna really have an impact on any neighboring businesses as they're up against the back of a building and the parking lot for the inventory vehicles.
Correct. We are also providing landscaping to minimize the impact of those walls as well.
When you say we're providing landscaping, we're providing it on our side or on the car dealership side?
On our side.
Okay.
And if you want to go to the landscape plan, you could see those plantings. It's a couple pages away. Keep going.
Well, I'm going. I'm sorry, my computer's not going as quickly as I'm trying to.
Okay. Close. So that's tree location plan, and there's the landscape plan. So you can see it's heavily landscaped, and we were able to compensate for the tree removal within that parcel, within the kidney parcel. And
I apologize. I'm not doing that. This is, it looks like my computer's speaking to Mr. Ciano's computer.
Yeah, I'm on my phone now because it's that bad on my computer, so
Yeah,
I'm seeing
go.
everything. We're good.
okay.
It's just a little slow.
So we're
Jennifer-
landscaping within the basin area
yes,
as well as around the perimeter.
yes, the basins are I was going to get into that later, but the basins are bio-retention basins. So they're inherently, in order to provide the water quality for the stormwater management, it includes a engineered soil, which just promotes infiltration as well as plant growth. So so we're proposing those two basins. The upper basin is basin 1, and then the lower basin on the other side of the wall along the eastern property line is basin 2. And so as part of our design, we recognized that this is a former landfill site, and at the recommendations of the planning board engineer, we are proposing polyethylene liners, which is basically impermeable liner below the basins. So they don't infiltrate into the groundwater. So the stormwater would basically come into the bio retention, infiltrate through the engineered media, and then eventually get collected into under drains that are right above the liner. And so the stormwater is still getting water quality benefits of the biomedia and the plants. And in order to prevent us from infiltrating, we're collecting it underground through under drain pipes, which discharge it to the stormwater system.
Okay, and we're complying with the stormwater management regulations in all regards?
Yes. Yes, there was one question with regards to putting the liner 2 feet above the seasonal high. However, since we're not infiltrating stormwater, we're proposing the liner at the groundwater elevation, and I have designed that in previous projects. I actually designed stormwater into the groundwater with these liners, which received DEP approval before. So I don't anticipate any concerns. The reason why I put it at the liner is so it doesn't have any hydrostatic pressure pushing up on the soil. However, the soil itself is 3 feet thick, which would obviously compensate any kind of buoyancy reactions. There's
Okay.
also a design question with regards to the water quality storm event and how much the water fills up in each basin during a water quality storm. And just to clarify the design, the basins are what we call routed. So it counts for the biomedia because it is engineered soil. It has a certain porosity. So it's like a stone, but with less porosity, just like any kind of soil that water infiltrates through. So in the design, the routing calculations include the biomedia as well as the stone as part of the volume calculation. And that's in accordance with the DEP B&P manual. And so just wanted to clarify that because if you look at the elevations in the routing, the water quality storm only gets up to 8 inches, which meets the B&P manual. So I just wanted to clarify that as that was a question in the report.
And by using the liner, we're essentially keeping any stormwater from getting into any of the contaminated portions of the property.
Correct. There are other, I was getting into, let me just jump right into the environmental summary. So the first, I want to clarify that the reason why the Langen memo was provided, and that's really for the what we call the main site where the building is, just to illustrate to the board and the professionals that it is a landfill site, and according to the DEP regulations, there are provisions that prevent the stormwater design from infiltrating in contaminated areas. So that's the reason why it's provided. It really has no bearing on the design itself because it has to do with more like methane recovery and so forth on the main site. But that's why I just wanted to clarify that's why the Langen memo was provided.
Right, but which is why I'm not moving. It was part of the record, but I'm not moving it in because we're not testifying as to it.
Right.
It was it was informational.
Right.
So
correct.
the items that we did move in. So let's talk about when we're proposing construction like this. What are the what's the regulation and what are we looking to do?
Well, DEP has the regulations under the site solid waste program, which is under NJAC 7:26, and that's where they regulate the landfill disruption permitting and the conditions in the permitting. So that we will be following those guidance documents. I thought again feedback.
Yeah, Mr. Ciano, your phone is issuing some feedback.
Okay, looks like it's better. So so as far as construction, there will be close.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, I just had to shut off my computer. I've been doing it through my phone. Hopefully you can hear me now clear.
Yep. Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's fine.
All right, continue.
Okay, so the construction will be closely monitored by the LSRP and the DEP, and during that process, there's going to be excavation of the existing landfill material, which we're transporting to the triangular portion of the lot, which already contains landfill material. And during construction, the excavation pits will be backfilled, and the soil will be covered by like tarp. And then there would be provisions for a water tank during construction to pump any stormwater that happens to get caught in the areas. Any
Patrick, let me take a step back. So the first thing is that we're taking out the contaminated soil and putting it in a designated area, which is permitted under the DEP regulation.
Correct.
Okay, and during construction, while there is a hole in the ground, we need to be careful that it is not mixing with rainwater and the like. So at the end of every day, it will be required to be covered to prevent that. And in the event there is any mixing, the LSRP would oversee a water pump truck coming in and actually pumping out the water from the hole and taking it off-site for disposal.
That is correct.
Okay. And to the extent it's necessary during construction, what precautions are being taken to make sure that there is no soil erosion so that no contaminated materials would wash away from our site into a nearby waterway?
We designed a soil erosion and sediment control plan, which is currently under review by Freehold Soils Conservation District. And we will be utilizing that plan to control sediment removal, erosion from the project.
And should what we discussed with the board engineer as part of our technical review is that we would submit a phased construction plan that outlined all of the various processes that we're discussing tonight, and that it will be discussed by the LSRP, that will show how it is staged and how each precaution is taken to ensure that there is no issue.
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to wait and let the LSRP testify as to the fact that the water is already considered to be contaminated, the groundwater. So I'm going to leave that for the LSRP once we're done with your testimony.
okay. All right. I just want to wrap up the environmental summary with indicating that after construction is complete on both parcels, there will be a 2-foot clean fill put on top. And also a like snow fence to show where that marker is from in below ground. So that adds in accordance with DEP guidance documents, and it also provides additional precautions with regards to water infiltrating through the landfill material.
Patrick, when you say the fence is going to be put up, you're talking about on the mound that we're creating on the triangle portion, not in the parking lot area.
Well, in the parking lot area, the concrete areas and the pavement areas are considered a cap according to the DEP. So obviously no water gets through them, so they're happy with that. But for the landscape areas, there will be required to have 2 feet of clean fill in the landscape areas. And also like a demarcation somehow to tell that when you get below that 2 feet, you're now into the landfill material.
Okay, so when you're talking about the demarcation, you're talking about underground, not necessarily a fence, vertical fence around it.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that there'll be a delineation between the clean fill and the contaminated fill that's existing there today.
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything in the CME report that we cannot comply with as it relates to either processes during construction or the stormwater management?
There's one comment that I just wanted to address, and that has to do with the upper basin 1. There, if you can.
Yeah, but which comment are you talking about in the CME report?
That is comment number 4F.
Okay. And which sheet would you like me to go call up?
If you can bring up the same one, the grading plan. So you could see roughly in the south middle right there. Yes, that is our upper bioretention basin, and you can see it collects a few inlets around the parking lot and cleans the soil, and then eventually discharges it to the bottom basin to the southeast. And you can see that we are providing a vehicle access to the bottom of the basin. And that was just an overabundance of caution. Although the BMP manual requires access, they don't specify whether it's vehicle or by people or maintenance personnel or even lawnmowers. They just want access to it, which we are accommodating on the upper basin by 360 degrees around the whole basin. So they can definitely get maintenance personnel down that 3-to-1 slope, which is obviously designed to handle lawnmowers. So we are providing access at the upper one. The bottom, we had the opportunity to put the vehicle access in it. So we went ahead and provided that. But in either event, the basins are bioretention. They're very low maintenance. We want them to grow, vegetation or to help filter the stormwater. So in our opinion, the upper basin doesn't need a vehicle access.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Chair, recognizing that the LSRP will go into greater detail with regard to the environmental regulation and monitoring, I would ask if there's any questions for Patrick as to what he testified to.
I'd like to just defer to what Patrick had said to our engineer and see if he has any comments to what was discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start off with the last thing that Mr. Lang talked about regarding the basin access. I don't have an issue with testimony provided. I think that it's a small basin, and just being able to have somebody walk down the slope with some small equipment is fine. I don't think they need to be able to get a vehicle down in there. Mr. Lyman, will there be an operation and maintenance manual provided for both basins?
Yes.
And can you talk about the retaining wall a little bit more? What is the method for construction of the retaining wall and I guess separation of the material that you're going to be holding back, that would be, the landfill material and the clean fill that you're going to be installing?
Okay.
Obviously, you talked about the snow fence or construction fence that would be laid down flat, but against the retaining wall, you're going to have a tall excavation, almost like a sheer cliff when you dig that. How is that going to be separated?
Right now, what the geotech report we provided was for groundwater, and we are in the middle of going out and doing additional borings in order to determine what type of wall we need in that area. Because if we propose a segmented retaining wall, it requires GeoGrid to go back about 8 to 10 feet behind the wall, and that would cause us to remove additional landfill material. So once we get back the results of the geotech report, we can determine which type of wall that we need to do, whether it's segmented retaining wall or a concrete wall. And so, either way, we will be addressing the separation, which requires a 2-foot clean fill to be not only vertically but horizontally from the wall, and then we'll be doing additional testing to see if the landfill material can be used for backfill behind the wall. But again, we need to make sure there's separation, at least 2 feet separation, so there's no possibility of water infiltrating through that media and out the wall. So our initial design is to use the segmented wall, in which the whole back of the wall will be backfilled with clean fill. So that's 8 to 10 feet, where the DEP only requires 2. However, we haven't ruled out the possibility of a poured in concrete retaining wall. And again, we'll have those same precautions, either method of retaining wall that we choose.
Okay. And how much material is going to have to be excavated and removed and brought over to that triangular?
That's a good question. Don't have that number, but I can approximate it.
That's fine.
I think I'll just do a quick calculation here. I think it's about 98. Give me 1 second. So the topsoil stockpile, it's not topsoil, but the area we're looking to put in, let's see here. Times. We're looking at close to 30,000 cubic yards, which equates to the height of the stockpile on the triangle portion. Now, if you know, after we go through our design, we will, you know, any excess material will obviously have to be transported off-site in accordance with DEP regulations at a approved recycling facility.
Okay. And the stockpile on the triangular lot, that has to be capped with a 2-foot clean fill as well.
Correct.
Okay. And will there be grass seed put on it or some kind of stabilization?
Well, in conjunction with the Freehold Soil Conservation District, they wanted us to stabilize that quicker. So we are proposing sod on there. And there was a question from Jim Higgins on how we're going to have that take on top of the 2 feet of clean fill. And, you know, we would have to have a water truck to irrigate it until it takes. And then it's immediate stabilization for the stockpile. And it would be low maintenance as well.
Okay. Is there, now I know in the, and maybe this is a question for your environmental engineer, there was some sampling of the landfill material to be done to determine whether there was any hazardous material. Was that completed? I think it says that it was supposed to be done in July in the report.
That I'm going to have to defer to the LSRP on. I don't have that information.
Okay, that's fine. Is there a concern of settlement in the parking lot area, particularly with your drainage structures, light pole foundations? Are there special design considerations that you have for that?
Yes, I do. So we're anticipating varied settlement in the parking lot, which the whole, quite frankly, the whole center experiences that kind of settlement. So we are planning for those differential settlement in the design. In particular, the light poles will be on pile foundations because, you know, because they're high poles and there's a lot of forces on them. The drainage structures, those will be okay, you know, as far as settlement, because they're smaller structures and there's not much forces on them, weight. So, and also obviously we're talking about the retaining wall, which we're still evaluating on how to stabilize the retaining wall as well.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Matlock?
Looking through my notes, I think that about does it. I would say to the board that I generally agree with the testimony provided, and the site is under the purview of the NJDEP and Freehold Soil, so obviously any approvals would be conditioned on those outside agencies approving this plan as well. So I think that is all I have for Mr. Wine.
Mr. Chairman, we can now go back to the members of the board to see if there are any questions they have.
Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If we could go back to the very beginning of the parking. Jennifer, could you bring that back up? I just
Sure.
question regarding when the vans come in and the people park their cars and then the vans come, how do they fulfill their van? How do they get from?
It's a great question. And I think that one of the things that Patrick had said that perhaps we didn't go over in great enough detail, the passenger vehicles will come, park, pick up the van, and they will drive the van over to the building and have it loaded up at the building. And if you remember the testimony at the original hearing, I think it was Samantha Mazo testified at the hearing, that there was 24 vans would line up, they would be loaded up and off they would go. And that number corresponds with the number per shift that Patrick testified to.
And that road leading to where the actual building is, obviously is a 2-lane road.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I just wasn't sure.
I'm sorry if we glossed over that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. So my first one is the bigger one, and maybe Ms. Krimko, you can answer me. I have a question about the DEP permitting. Is that better held until we hear from the LSRP?
It is.
Okay.
Because I'm sure you know, as the head of the Environmental Commission, the LSRP is acting as the agent of the DEP to enforce their regulation. So while we're paying for him, he's actually doing his service for the DEP. So I'm going to let him offer all that testimony.
Sure. It was more of a process question, but I will hold it.
Yeah, please.
I just have two other questions. So for these bioretention basins for the upper basin, as I think everyone on the board knows, I'm a very big fan of green infrastructure and bioretention basins in general. I'm a little confused on this one though, since you're putting the sealer at the bottom, it's not infiltrating. So you have this whole upper lot that is primarily, there's going to be a lot of hydrocarbons coming off those vans, I would anticipate. Did you look at anything in the form of a manufactured treatment device to try and better that water quality so before it gets into that lower basin? Or are you thinking that this bioretention basin is going to have a better effect at reducing volume as well?
Actually, both basins are bioretention basins. So they both have the stone at the bottom and the biomedia, which is basically engineered soil. And then we have the plants above it. So all the water comes in, fills up the hole, the basin, and then it infiltrates through the biomedia into the stone, and then it's collected by the under drains and then discharged off the site into the drainage system.
Patrick, I think the question is it your expert opinion that these bioretention basins and by filtering through the biomedia is a better alternative than a structure?
Oh, yes, it is.
Than an engineered structure. And is it preferred by the DEP to do it this way?
Yes, it is actually preferred. This is the green infrastructure they want to see. They're moving away from the manufactured treatment devices.
And it doesn't matter if it's being infiltrated or not. It's the function of the bioretention to clean the water before it gets to the piping.
Correct.
Yeah, Mr. DeFiglia, I would offer that I agree with that. And the manufactured treatment devices, as we've mentioned, they're kind of being phased out. They're really not part of the new NJDEP stormwater regulations. If one is to be installed, it needs to be basically a variance granted to install a manufactured treatment device rather than a green infrastructure. And you need to have a reason why you can't do that. So in this case, I would agree with the testimony.
Yeah, and this is probably the first and only time that anyone's ever going to hear me say that an MTV would be better than green infrastructure. But given the unique situation where we have, a former landfill underneath, I just wanted to ask and make sure. And then the last question for the triangle dumping site where we discussed you're going to, put 2 feet of fill on top of it. You're going to cover it with sod. Is there any, would the applicant at all be open to some sort of other, after the sod takes and grows, to some sort of native grass plantings on that site?
I'm going to defer to the LSRP because I don't want to agree to anything that we're not allowed to do. So
Gotcha.
let's ask him what the DEP allows, and then I can check with my client to see what we would do there.
All right.
I will say that I don't know that it's going to be mowed sod, that it would likely go into its natural vegetative state. But again, I'll defer to the LSRP.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Just real quick, it said in you had testified that nobody would be walking across that part from where they go. What is the purpose of the crosswalk then? And if that's the case, then I'm really concerned about a whole bunch of traffic going now across that road. If anybody's, we all know that area is crazy. And I'm more even concerned about, if you're telling me nobody's going to cross, that's great, but what's the purpose of the crosswalk then?
Patrick, I think that's a question that came up during the tech review also, right?
Yeah, I mean, the crosswalk is mainly for, emergency access and ADA access. Quite frankly, I don't know if that's really required, but we propose it in that fashion for those reasons. So again, like we testified, none of the employees will be coming over, but we wanted to at least provide.
I think you're incentivizing people by even putting the crosswalk there. You're saying, all right, here's a safe place to cross right here. And if you're not required to do it, I don't understand why it's on there. And then secondarily, can you speak to how traffic, is it just stop signs as these trucks are looking to exit at their half-hour intervals? So you have to get 24 Sprinter vans across that road. Is there going to be somebody from Amazon directing traffic? How does the traffic flow work in that area?
Yeah, so the traffic flow, you see there's 2 driveways proposed. There's a ingress and egress driveway provided at the north end, which is in line with the leg of the ring road. And also we're proposing an ingress only right across from the Sprinter van exit from the main site. Correct. There it is.
Can you please, just so I could.
Sorry, I thought I was.
No, that's fine. She's just pulling it up here. Hold on.
Okay. So you can see at the north end, there's a 2-way driveway, which is lined up with the leg of the ring road that goes to the north.
And I'm sorry, will people be able, will residents, let's call them, be able to drive through that part of the parking lot? Or is the black line that you're proposing along the top here, is that just a CAD drawing, or is this open parking?
Well, it's not restricted if there's no gates or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. So,
just if I could, Mr. Duffy, there will be for each shift as the vans, and there was testimony at the last hearing, and I can have Samantha be sworn in after Patrick is done, but there will be yard marshals, so there will be employees actually directing, organizing, making sure that it's only the employees coming in, and more importantly, managing the flow of the vans in and out.
Will they be managing the flow of traffic on that road then, or no?
To the extent necessary, I suppose, but I don't expect that it would be necessary based on the fact that this is, and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a left turn out here, correct?
Good. Could be.
Good God.
It could be straight. I think it's going to be straight.
Right, but what I'm saying is this is a left turn, or it would be straight as you had indicated. So it would just be a matter of waiting for the break in the traffic to go through.
Right, and that's the high end of the site, so they can see the traffic coming around the bend. And obviously it's flatter up at that top end on Sunset.
Okay, and
I mean, I'm just concerned now, you're now making a four-way essentially traffic stop there with the vans coming at you from your, what are you calling, the kidney space going westbound on this. You've got all this traffic going southbound. So you're telling me that these 24 Sprinter vans are just going to have to you know, I'm not a traffic engineer, but this just sounds insane to me. So,
well, a couple of things. So the a couple of things. The times that this is occurring is not during the peak hours of the shopping center. Remember,
that place is crazy any time of the day. It's crazy at 11 p.m. over there. It's just, you know, you're not going to be able to convince me it's not crazy. I appreciate the fact that they're staggering the times, because having it all at once is just, that's untenable. But, you know, I just,
well, as far
I'll be
as crazy,
fascinated to watch this happen with all these New York plates running around here. So
understood. And I'm just saying that, crazy or not,
call a spade a spade.
If there's no customers in any of these various shopping centers because it's before hours, I'm not sure where all that traffic is.
I mean, people cut through there all the time. They, you know, it's, you know, I cut through there all the time to try to avoid 35 and 66 as I live over on Wayside. I mean, that parking lot area is just getting more and more crazy. And I appreciate the fact that they're having, you know, that we're going to have this Amazon facility over here, but just the logistics of this sound futuristic to me. I don't understand in practicality how it's all going to work. But
Mr. Jeffrey, just to add to that, years ago, I think the prior owner had in fact solemnized that the ring road is in fact public. It's public access by deed and the like. So certainly you going through there and anybody in the public going through there is certainly permitted.
And no, I didn't suggest otherwise, Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
Of course.
No, I absolutely understand that. I'm just like, you know, you're walling off this one section. And then, I mean, I guess my other question to you also is, was there ever any consideration of actually moving this lot to the other side of that road? So they're actually all more closer to that facility. So when they have to pick up their packages, they're not actually crossing over that road. And then they have egress, hopefully to the right, never to the left.
So I think what you're suggesting, and let me just call this back up, and I know it takes a moment to do that, so just bear with me. I think what you're suggesting is reconfigure the ring road in its entirety, and instead of having it a straight shot off of Sunset Avenue, having the ring road actually come around the parking lot like that?
No, I'm actually talking about moving the parking spaces as you're proposing in this from the kidney shape and moving them to the west in the plans to the part where right there where your cursor is. Why was that ever considered for the van parking lot area? So that way you're on the west side of the road.
Yeah, those spaces are going to be used for the retail that's there for the forget the name of it, at home. As well
what's
as
on the front side, on the Target side?
I'm sorry,
that's the entrance for the at home?
Yes, that's the at home. I'm sorry. These are the spaces that are required as part of the Amazon for all of the employees who are not the van drivers, who will be actually working within the retail fulfillment, retail distribution.
So you're telling me now, now you're telling me that you're adding all these employee traffic, the 24 Sprinter vans. Like, this is just, I mean, wow.
No,
this is going to be a lot.
They were always going to be here. We're just giving them a segregated area from which to park and to stay out of the parking lot traffic that will be used by the general public. That's what this proposal is.
I have a lot of safety concerns as the way that this is all drawn up and the way that you're trying to push people in this direction. And, you know, just knowing the site as I know it, it's just, like I said, this is pretty futuristic stuff here. So I'll leave it at that. Thank
Well,
you.
Patrick, as a licensed professional, are you comfortable as to the safety of the access from the ring road, the sight distance being there, the ability for the van drivers to navigate safely over the ring road in between the parking lots?
Yes. We actually looked at that early on. We had more driveways, but the sight distance was not accommodating it. So that's why the driveways are where they're at, because those are the safest locations.
And that came as a suggestion, actually, this design and the way these driveways are came as a suggestion from Mr. Fitzgerald after meeting in tech review. That's correct. And I guess I would turn then to Mr. Matlack, because while it was certainly his predecessor's suggestion to do it this way, do you feel, Mr. Matlock, that as presented is the safest way to do it?
Well, wait a second. I'd like to go back. Mr. Lyman, do you designate yourself as a traffic engineer in addition to being a PE?
Well, I'm not a traffic engineer in the sense of traffic engineer, but I understand traffic engineer. Yes.
All right. Was there if I could just ask the next question, was there a traffic study done for this application?
No.
All right, Mr. Matlock.
Yeah, come on, like this is just crazy now. Why didn't you guys do a traffic study? I don't understand this.
Because
and would it be fair to say, Mr. Matlock, that as the new engineer, since there wasn't a traffic study done, are you even able to give an opinion on this in light of the background and your involvement?
Well, I would say that the looking at the geometry of the lot and the locations of the driveways, you do want to line up intersections. So it makes sense that they have the entrance and exit driveway at the north side lined up with the ring road, and then down where it's coming out of the I guess the loading area, lined up with that access drive. So from a geometric standpoint, that makes sense. I would ask that and this might have been part of the previous application, but what are the hours of the shift changes for the the trucks?
And that was part of the submission that we gave. Let me just, so it was, the first shift was between, they were parked overnight from 9 p.m. to 9:30 a.m. The first shift would arrive approximately 9:30 a.m. And then that process would be repeated 3 more times. So at approximately 10 o'clock, another group would arrive. The cycle would be repeated at 10:30 or 11. So it would all happen during the morning hours.
Yeah, Ms. Krimko, just to
what
be
time
clear
does
on
the
the
mall
record,
open?
Ms. Krimko, you're referring to the document, one-page document. It's entitled Summary of Parking Lot Operations / Limitations.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And as far as, just to answer the question, as far as submitting a traffic report, typically, first of all, it's not a requirement on any checklist for permitted use. Typically, the traffic report would be submitted to justify variance as it relates to parking and/or for a use where there is new ingress and egress out of the site onto the general roadways, or if
But
it wasn't
isn't this an egress out onto a general roadway? It just happens to be what Sandy just said. They treat it as a public roadway.
What I'm trying to finish is that, and if it was a use variance and we were justifying the trip generation, when Sandy was asking about whether or not Patrick is a traffic engineer, typically there is no licensure for traffic engineering. It happens to be someone who focuses on traffic engineering and with the experience. So it was the opinion of the engineer who designed this that the ingress and egress onto this ring road is in fact safe. I will point out that a few years back, a 24,000 square foot office building was approved on this pad site, which have generated insurmountable amounts more traffic than what we're proposing today on this location.
That's
I'm not really
on the record
concerned
right
what was
now,
proposed
Jennifer.
before.
Ms.
I just,
Kremko, that's not on the record. I mean, to go
Right.
back
I
so many
mean,
years, that's,
come on.
you'd have to bring that in. The recollection from that is so long ago. And by the way, in terms of the traffic engineer, yeah, of course, it's not a special designation. That's why I asked him if he considers himself to be a traffic engineer. We're all familiar with traffic studies by traffic engineers. For example, you brought in your traffic engineer for DLN. Yeah, I think everybody on the board understands that. Thanks.
And what time do the employees, all the other employees that you said were parking on that left side, show up at the
Well,
facility?
Again, that's an operational question. I can have Samantha Meza, who is on the call. She can answer those questions. And
That'd be great. Thank you.
any other questions for Patrick?
I got a couple questions. All right, Patrick. So I know this sounds crazy, but I think when I heard the original case was proposed, that there was an extra parking that was available, like the Delta was, that there was extra spots available. Why do we need to build an extra parking lot when it appears that there are so many other spots in that facility that's already built? Is there any way, I mean, I know obviously you've done all this engineering, but I'm sort of questioning, like, how many extra spots do we need? And would it be easier, instead of digging up all this toxic dirt and whatever is in that landfill, just to maybe put the employees in some area and van them over or something like that? I'm just asking the question.
I think it's it's Amazon's operations that they did their studies on how many van spaces they need. And based on their studies, I think they need these extra 162 spaces, or 132, I should say. And it's, I guess, important to be proximity to the fulfillment center itself.
You know, I do agree with. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to add, in thinking about this location, to the extent that there were dialogue, comments with regards to the former engineer who's not here. I haven't heard Mr. Matlock indicate that he was cognizant of those comments, that the board really can't consider what may have been discussed by someone who's not here to explain it. Okay, go ahead. Back to you, Mr. Counsel.
Well, if I may, I believe that Mr. Matlock specifically said that most of his report is incorporation of all of the comments from the prior board engineer. So when I referenced the prior board engineer, it's because all of his comments are now part of Mr. Matlock's report.
Again, who recommended what in terms of a tech review? Nobody is here from the board to describe that. Certainly, the board.
Well, Mr. Kirk was present, and certainly the applicant should not be penalized because the board changed professionals. We met in tech review and planned for months to get to this point. We followed the direction of the then engineer, and now we're following the direction of the current engineer.
I'm just saying you can't indicate what a former professional said at a tech review meeting because he's not here. But what Mr. Matlock says certainly is what can be indicated. If Mr. Kirk has independent recollection, that's fine. It's not intended to take away anything from your presentation or Mr. Matlock's.
I simply made a representation of how we got here, and I gave some procedural history.
Okay. That's fine.
So if I can continue. So I have to agree with Mr. Duffy on this. People tend to fly around that ring road at some fairly high rates of speed, even though they probably shouldn't. I think it's like, whatever, 15 or 20 miles per hour. But, you come whipping around where the Petco is, you come whipping around where Costco is. And I do have some concerns, especially since there wasn't a traffic study done, that, you've got vans. It's going to be like playing a game of Frogger. People are going to be kind of flipping through and trying to get around. And I don't know what the weekends are going to look like. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think it's going to be quite dicey, and I think that's something that I would look to our engineer to answer that question. So you can address that, or I can also ask Mr. Lyman. I do have some concerns also about the sod issue. As a guy who can't seem to grow a good lawn, I do question how you're going to hose this sod down and try to get it to take. I'm not a gardener. My lawn's reflective of that, but maybe you could answer some of those questions. How you're going to, because what if it doesn't take? Now we've got sort of this burned out, ugly thing going on.
Right. If it doesn't take, then it has to be replaced. Simple as that.
All right. And as far as the traffic goes, I don't know how the board feels about this, but it's definitely a concern of mine. That's for sure.
I'll answer the one question regarding, I guess, my opinion on the traffic. 24 vehicles leaving the site or leaving the parking lot at a time, I guess, in half-hour intervals, is what we're considering here. Mr. Lynham, do you think that is enough of an impact to cause significant delays on the ring road or at the driveway?
No, if you look at it, it's 48 vehicles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
So in that hour, they have, ample time to get out. And if they don't, then you can make a right turn to get out. We didn't do a traffic study, but, I'm familiar with this ring road as well. And I understand the board's concern with the traffic cutting through. I just don't see the impact of 50 vehicles per hour as a huge impact to that traffic on the ring road.
I would say that I generally agree with that. It's 132 vans. It seems like a lot. However, the staggering, I think, does mitigate the traffic impacts.
I think that Patrick and Ben, I think that what we're also forgetting is that this used to be, we're taking a very large portion of what could be a retail building and generating a tremendous amount of traffic that was coming in and out of the entrances onto the road and the left turns that used to be made out of Sears. And we are essentially eliminating all of that traffic that was there when this was operating as a retail, because the employees who are coming for shifts are staying for 8 hours plus. So the amount of turnover and the amount of trips in and out of our ingress and egress onto that ring road from the former Sears site is dramatically reduced because of the change of this use. So while we may be adding an additional 24 vans every half an hour over a 2-hour period, we're virtually eliminating all of the retail traffic that was otherwise coming in and out of this 90,000 square foot area.
Again,
are
that's
you a
not
traffic
testimony-
analyst?
That's not testimony
Yeah.
by an expert. Of course, Ms.
Right.
Krimko
I mean,
can
that's just right.
summarize it. But I think the focus by Mr. Duthie and possibly others is it's not necessarily the traffic that was or is coming from the western portion. It's the fact that there is now a volume of traffic that will be coming from the east side of that ring road to intersect at that intersection. Is that fair to say, Mr. Duthie? Did I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So again, I was offering it to the engineers. I wasn't testifying as whether or not that is the case, that while there may be more traffic on the ring road itself, is it true, Patrick, that by converting this to the retail distribution center as opposed to a retail store with the numbers of customers that come, that we are actually eliminating the potential conflict of cars coming in and out of this parking lot on a regular basis onto the ring road?
I agree with that.
Sure.
I mean, I do. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you think about it, the warehouse distribution center has way less trips than a retail center. I mean, that's without being a traffic engineer, you can determine that.
But, and I think maybe some of my board members would share the sentiment. If the retail use had as many trips as we're describing, it would probably still be a retail center and not have closed. You know, I think that the conditions on the ring road for anyone who drives it, they're fraught.
And Mr. Chairman, any other questions by board members before we open it up to the public for?
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, let's open it up to the public.
And again, just to be clear, at this particular spot in a hearing, the questions by members of the public are just that. There are to be no comments, and that's why we don't place anybody under oath at this time. Certainly, after the cross-examination and the witnesses testifying on behalf of the applicant, then there's an opportunity for comments under oath, or in fact, it's possible for experts from objectors, not that we're planning on that. I see that Mr. Brockle is on the line. Mr. Chairman, do you want to recognize Mr. Brockle for questions?
Yes. Mr. Brockle?
How you all doing tonight? Great proposal by Amazon. I mean, I'm thrilled that they're going to be there. I have a couple questions for Mr. Lyman. The parking, I'll do that first if we're talking about parking. There's 162 spots. You have 132 vans. There's spots open for 30. And I'm hearing that 24 vans are going to be used in the shifts. So I'm just trying to do the math. It seems like a lot of vans are still in the parking lot. Can you explain that?
Yeah, well, it's you have 132 vans, and so yeah, there's 30 vacant, and then 24 come in, take up the 24 of the 30 that are open. That leaves 6 as a buffer. So then the vans leave, and that allows 24 more spaces to be opened. So back to 30, and then half an hour, same thing happens, same cycle.
How many shifts are there? You said so you're rotating.
Four, 9:30 to 11 at half an hour shifts.
Okay, then they go out, they do the deliveries, and they come back, and there's another whole nother shift, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So there's multiple shifts within a shift, as that we say, it's like sub shifts, I guess.
Oh, well, they're the same vehicle. I mean, a shift is they come in, they pick up their van, go out, do the deliveries, and then come back. So it's the same shift.
And they're coming back to that specific parking lot that we're talking about.
Correct.
Are there people that walk, and we're talking about walking in a walkway?
Wait, Mr. Brockle, if I could
Yes.
just excuse you one
Sure.
second, just to clarify, Patrick, those are 8-hour shifts. It's not that they're running out and coming right back.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Brockle.
That's okay, thank you. Now the vans come back and they're empty and they're parked, and the gentlemen or ladies go home in their own car. How do the vans get filled with the goods?
That happens in the morning. So in the beginning of their shift, they'll park their vehicle, take their van, bring it over to the fulfillment center, load up, and then go out and do their deliveries, and then they come back to the kidney parking lot and pick up their car.
So they're getting their empty van. When they get there, they drive over, they have to cross the street to get to the building and fill up. Okay, I thought it was another person involved with that. So it's the same person, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Before you ask another question,
Sure.
to clarify, Ms. Krimko, I just wanted to be clear about the 3 versus 4. If you look at the summer, is it 3 or 4 shifts?
Again, I'll have to defer to Ms. Mazo. I'm not going to offer the testimony.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because if you look at the summary, the first bullet point on that talks about something at 9:30, and then it says this process will be repeated 3 more times. So
Right, so that would be, that to me, 3 + 1 is 4, but
Yeah.
again, I'm not sure that that's a legal concern, but we can
No, it's
certainly.
not a legal concern. I just want to make sure that, you know, the record's clear for you as to whether or not it's 3 or 4. The questions are focusing in on turnaround.
Another question on the number of slots. Is it possible near the basin that you're proposing, is it possible to eliminate those slots and make a bigger basement to create more stormwater retention? Since you're not really infiltrating, is that a possibility?
I don't understand why the stormwater management complies with all the regulations as far as water quality and volume, so it doesn't need any more volume.
Is it compliance with the 100-year storm or
Yes.
It is. So those 2 basins can handle a 100-year storm.
Correct.
Do you, when you reach the 100-year storm, where does you know where that water's heading?
Yes, it's heading south. We're proposing a connection through our outlet control structure to the south.
Okay. And that's basically dumping in on the opposite south side of the exit road, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any thoughts of doing some additional stormwater retention in that area or not? And because it's combining with the other stormwater for the rest of the complex.
There's no plans for additional stormwater.
Okay.
The project complies with what we're proposing.
Okay.
For this area, yes.
Okay. You talked also the stormwater grates that are on the circle road or the circle road.
Mhm.
A lot of those grates are not compliant with the standard DEP grates. They're wide open, a lot of them. Are you also replacing those near that site to comply with the standard stormwater grates?
All inlets proposed will be, we're not proposing to change any other existing grates.
But the ring road is going to be affected. So are you going to be offering that as additional improvement to the complex?
Now, we're not really affecting the ring road. The only reason we're affecting ring road is to go underneath with a pipe.
You're going to have a ton of traffic going back and forth. I'm just thinking that you really should be adding to that. In addition to this sediment controls.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Bracco wasn't sworn, and as Mr. Brown had indicated at the beginning, they're not sworn because it's questions only.
I'll ask questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that sounded
I'm
like
sorry.
testimony, Don.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
he's getting the questions.
I'll get back to the question. Are there anything proposed for the ring road grates in terms of sediment control and erosion control and all that during the construction phase?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And you said the biomaterial is you have a plan to maintain that. I think I heard. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's engineered soil, so it's just engineered that way to be low maintenance. So and you want the vegetation to grow and flourish, because that provides much of the water quality benefits of the bio retention.
I got you. And the retention wall you're building sounds large, and it looks like it's in the same area as the basin. Is that all factored in, the weight of the water and all that good stuff?
Yes.
It's basically a dam you're creating. Is that correct?
Well, there is a berm on the
Okay.
opposite side, so that would,
I got you.
that would be considered something like that. But yeah, of course, it's a dam holding back earth, not water.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brockle. Any other questions?
All right, Mr. Chair, hearing none, then we can go back to Ms. Krimko, presumably to present the next witness.
Okay.
Well, I just have some follow-up questions for this current witness.
Okay.
Patrick, in the last hearing when the retail distribution center was approved here, how many parking spaces did we have in the prior lot versus how many we have now? How many did we reduce it by for members of the public to park in? Because of the large area that we have created for the staging and the like.
Second. So. So we actually lost 214 parking spaces when during the prior approval in order to configure the site to accommodate the loading operations of Amazon.
Okay, so essentially going back to the questions that I asked previously, those 214 cars that would otherwise be going in and out of this site are no longer doing that. And as opposed, we're proposing them to be in an organized fashion, coming in and out of a parking lot that's lined up with the ring road, as opposed to jumping into the traffic. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Grimko, you can.
Thank you. I'd like to call, well, if I could have a 2-minute health break. And then when we come back, I will have my LSRP.
I agree with you there. Let's take a quick 2 minutes and we'll reconvene then, okay?
Very good.
All right.
As quick and effective. Amy, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. DeFilia?
Where else would I be? Still here.
Mr. Duffy?
Here.
Dr. Fisher? I see you. Dr. Fisher?
He's here. He's muted.
I'm here.
Ms. Close?
Here.
Mr. Siano?
Here.
Mr. Weinstein?
Here.
Okay.
We're ready to proceed.
All right.
So you have your next witness, Ms. Grimko?
Yes, I'd like to call our LSRP, Christopher Esposito, have him sworn and take a moment to qualify himself.
Mr. Esposito, would you raise your right hand, please? And oh, there he is. I can state for the record, I can see his hand, so he's able to swear. Mr. Esposito, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Grimko?
Thank you. Mr. Esposito, you're the, why don't you explain to the board what your role is as it relates to this property, as well as your expertise as an LSRP, and just take a brief moment to explain to the board what that means.
Sure. I am a licensed site remediation professional, licensed by the DEP to oversee the remediation of contaminated sites. Basically, there's a whole set of regulations that sites have to follow once there's contamination identified. And we guide our clients of what the DEP regulations are and how to address them appropriately with reports and cleanup standards to the DEP.
Okay, and you're licensed by the state and you're acting essentially as an agent of the DEP of promulgating their rules and regulations and ensuring compliance on the site.
Correct.
Okay, and as part of that, you follow what their regulations are with regard to the proposed construction, and you submit reports that are ultimately approved by the DEP?
They're approved by me and reviewed by the DEP, and then DEP reaches out and asks us if they have any additional questions.
Okay, so you heard the testimony from the project engineer with regard to the process that would go forward. And I believe one of the board members had asked about a reference to contamination testing that was in one of the reports. Could you please explain what the results are?
But,
Sure.
excuse me, Liz,
Yeah.
we have to go through the procedure of it. We have to actually have him qualified, accepted. I did have a preliminary question though. Mr. Esposito, are you actually testifying as an agent of the state tonight?
No.
Very good. You have your own company, right?
Yes, I work for a company. Correct.
Right, very good. And Mr. Chair, do any members of the board have any questions about his qualifications before you determine whether or not to accept him as the expert he is being presented as?
You don't have any questions? Anybody on the board have questions? Okay.
So
So
again,
you accept-
Mr.
accept
Chair,
him
since
as an
this,
expert, right?
I'm sorry, Sandy, I didn't hear what you said.
You accept him as an expert?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Go ahead.
so again, Chris, and not only is the board accepting it, but the state licenses you as an expert in this field. So let's talk a little bit about what you found with the further testing as well as additional precautions during construction.
Okay. As of, we are in the middle of testing, we have half the results back. Nothing came back so far as hazardous. Basically, we have low levels of PCB and some pesticides in the samples in the soil, which correspond to are very similar to the previous results taken from across the landfill. In terms of, I just want to clear something up in terms of groundwater contamination. There is no groundwater contamination from the landfill based on the additional the reports submitted to the state for the site. So groundwater is not currently impacted by the landfill, or is not anticipated to be impacted from the landfill. The only groundwater impacts at the site are from at the former Stearns property, where there was a former gas tank, or I think it was a heating oil tank, where there's some benzene concentration in the groundwater above the current standard. And there is a CEA for that area on that far side of the property.
And what is a CEA, Chris?
A CEA is a classification exception area, which limits the installation of drinking water wells in a certain portion of a property.
Okay, and the protocols that were described by Mr. Lineham, both with regard to the construction, the transporting, and the ultimate capping of the site with the pavement, and in those areas where it's not going to be capped with pavement, the 2 feet of clean fill, is that all in accordance with the regulations governing how this site would be developed?
Yes, these caps are actually greater than the current caps that are in place. Currently, the site is capped with a 1-foot fence and 1 foot of clean soil. After redevelopment of the site, we'll either have an impervious surface as the parking lot, or a 2-foot cap on the site.
Okay, and there was a question with regard to the hill that we're creating on the diamond portion. Are there any regulations with regard to what plantings would go on there?
The only recommendation I would have is that we have a 2-foot cap. You don't want to put any kind of vegetation in that's going to rip up the soil or have roots penetrating our geotextile fabric or a barrier that we put in, or a tree that would be on the slope, because that tree would fall down. We could potentially expose the contamination, the landfill material to the public, which we want to avoid doing at all costs.
Okay, and typically when the sod takes or the grass grows there and it's stabilized, is it typically maintained and mowed, or is it left to its natural state?
It could be either way. You know, the biggest concern for us is the 2-foot cap to avoid direct contact with the material beneath it. And that's one of the reasons we have either the snow fence or a geotextile fabric on the bottom of the cap, so that if somebody hits that material, they know they're going into, there's a visual warning that you are passing through clean soil into a contaminated layer.
Okay, so it's your recommendation that trees or anything with roots or the like that would go below the 2 feet would not be proposed, and that instead we should stay with the grass that's being proposed?
Correct. If trees were to be planted, we would request a thicker cap beneath the root ball.
Okay.
But that
And
that could be reviewed as part of any future planning.
okay, and as far as any concerns with regard to migration of any of the contaminated soil or any negative impact as a result of the landfill during construction, are there any concerns or any other additional precautions that need to take place?
Most of the concerns would be addressed with the soil sediment and erosion and control plan. We have put in our monitoring plan that any exposed landfill material overnight would be covered with plastic, just to avoid contact and also erosion if there was a rain event. We also, as Patrick discussed, if there are any pits where water could accumulate, we would put some pumps in there and pump that water out into a frac tank so that any water would not flow out of a pit that would be in contact with any landfill material and have the potential to flow off a site, even though as an extra precaution, as soil and sediment control plans would be already in place.
Okay, so you're confident that the construction as proposed, as well as the development as proposed, will be in full keeping with all of the regulations governing a landfill such as this, and you're confident that there'd be no harm to the public, to the surrounding areas, and equally as importantly, to the nearby water courses?
Correct.
I don't know if the board members have any specific operational questions or procedural questions for Mr. Esposito.
Well, let's open it up to the board. Do you have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, and Ms. Krimko, bear with me because I think this is new ground for our board. This site is governed under DEP Solid Waste Management Plan, correct?
Correct, and also the site remediation program.
Right, and so what types of permits under the Solid Waste Management Plan are they going to need in order to do this?
We would need a major disruption permit.
Major disruption permit. Okay, so here we go. Let me ask you this. This site is in an area of ocean that has been identified as an overburdened community. And under the new environmental justice law, that type of permit under the solid waste management plan requires certain activities to comply with the new environmental justice law. What's the plan to accommodate that?
I am not familiar with the environmental justice law. As part of the site remediation program, the groundwater was assessed around the property. As the groundwater was assessed, impacts were not identified from the landfill to the site groundwater.
Okay, so then I guess, Ms. Krimko, that question's to you then, if you know the answer under the new law. And that's why I say this is new ground. It is new law. I don't think we've ever encountered it in ocean. I don't know what the zoning board's done. Maybe Mr. Kirk can offer some insight there.
Well, what I can tell you, Mr. DeFiglia, is I'm not familiar with the environmental justice law, so I can't speak as to it. What I do rely on is the licensed professional licensed by the state to ensure compliance with all of the rules and regulations governing this. And again, this is a state regulated condition, not a municipal regulated condition. So it really does fall within the purview and jurisdiction of the DEP.
Yes, I'm like I said, this is the first time I think we've encountered it. I'm just curious, and I guess that is a question for Sandy too, as we go forward. This is something that's regulated by DEP, as are some of the other environmental concerns, but you know, this is new ground for us. I'm just trying to feel our way through it because I haven't seen anything in the materials that we reviewed addressing this specific law and the specific requirements thereof. And I want to make sure that it doesn't somehow fall through the cracks.
To answer your question, Ed, at least preliminarily, if the board decides to approve this, it would be subject to the standard conditions. And in this particular case, as Mr. Matlock indicated, there has to be a specific compliance with DEP related rules and regulations that he sets forth at the end of his letter. I heard Mr. Esposito indicate that it's subject to a major permit that can be added if the board again passes this. In terms of the particulars, I concur with Ms. Krimko. I'm not particularly familiar with the applicability, and I don't know if we should put Mr. Matlock on the line for his first hearing. I don't know how much he's dug into new DEP regulations. So that's as far as I can go for you.
And again, Mr. DeFiglia, I'm not doubting you because you clearly have more environmental knowledge than probably everybody on here except Mr. Esposito. So I'm not doubting you. I don't know what this environmental justice law is, if it's a state regulation, a federal regulation, if it even applies to the current scenario. So what I can tell you is if it is a state or federal regulation, we're bound to conform to it if it applies.
I'm looking at an article online real quick, and it says the law, which supporters say is one of the toughest in the nation, would apply to proposals for newer expanded power plants, recycling facilities, incinerators, sludge operators, sewage treatment plants, landfills, or other major source of potential pollution. This is a closed landfill. However, what we are doing is consistent. We also have a remedial action permit for the site from the site remediation program, which has to do with the deed notice and engineering controls already in place on the property. As part of this new application, we're just changing the engineering controls at the site. We're not exposing any more material that would be to any people or anything that we're just moving some impacted soil from one portion of the site to an already impacted portion of the site. And both sites will be capped with a thicker cap than is currently in place. So we're actually increasing actions on that material.
So, so then I will, I'm not going to ask him to speak, but Mr. Matlack, then can I trust that you take a look at the concern I've raised as part of your final report?
Yeah, I can take a look at that. I'm in the same position. I'm not familiar with the applicability of the environmental justice law in this case.
I don't think many people are. That's why I'm asking.
It's a good point to raise.
Way to stump everybody, Mr. DeFiglia.
Listen, I should just go to bed now. Call it a night.
And Ms. Kremko has stipulated, as I understand it, that if it does apply, because she said if any applicable federal or state rules or regulations or laws apply, then the applicant will comply. Is that fair to say?
We have no choice, so yes.
Okay, so Mr. Matlock can take that under advisement. If the application is approved, you can make it subject to a determination by our engineer as to whether or not it applies. And if it applies, the applicant must abide by it.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I've got a question for Mr. Esposito. So you said you had 50% of the report back as far as the contamination, is that correct?
I have all we collected 30 samples from the material proposed for transport from the kidney shaped parcel to the triangle parcel. I have all the results with the exception of all metals results. So.
Is this a report that we will have, privy to us prior?
This would be included in the major disruption permit. And I'm not sure, I can, once the major disruption permit is approved or submitted, we can copy you on that report.
So, Mr. Fisher, it's not something that the municipality regulates or has jurisdiction over, but if you'd like to be courtesy copied from what we submit to the DEP, we'd certainly be happy to do that.
I think my concern more is, when you disturb something that's sort of been dormant for a long time, and then all of a sudden you expose it now to rainwater, air, what are we What are we releasing? What is the potential hazard out there?
And I think that's why Mr. Esposito's here. I think, so Chris, let's talk to
Yeah.
that.
This material is already exposed to rainwater. The cap right now is 1 foot of clean soil on top of both areas of these landfill. So in a normal rain event, rain percolates through this landfill material and it does come in contact with this material and merges with site groundwater. We've already shown that the groundwater is not impacted from any rainwater percolating through this material. So I don't see.
So I think
yeah.
I think the question, Chris, is by disturbing this, regardless of what this testing finds, are we creating any additional potential hazard, or are we making anything potentially worse? Are we disturbing a sleeping dog?
In my experience, no. At times we could run additional tests to show that this material does not leach. That was done previously as part of the assessment of the landfill, and it showed that none of this material is leaching to the groundwater at the site, or has the potential to leach to the groundwater at the site.
And is that the only potential? Is that the only potential impact there could be? I think Dr. Fisher is suggesting that you're exposing it to the air. Is there any type of materials that by disturbing the soil or exposing it to the air would have any negative impact on the
Not any
general public?
materials that we found in this landfill material. All volatiles were not detected. That would be a concern. All of them were below the most stringent DEP standard. The only compounds in one of the samples, we have pH compounds, which are polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which are similar to asphalt in one of the samples. And I think 2 or 3 of the samples had concentrations of a pesticide chlordane, and PCBs were the only other contaminant of concern detected at the site.
And disturbing any of these contaminants would not have any negative impact on the air or the water?
No, most of these compounds are what's called immobile compounds. So they're pretty stuck to the soil and do not migrate or volatilize. Migrate to the groundwater or volatilize.
And by volatilize, you mean explode into the air in the form of a gas?
Correct.
Well, I have a question for you, Mr. Esposito. We calling this a landfill. Is this the landfill that I recall dating back to the late 1800s? Is that what we're looking at here, or is there been something?
This is referred to the M&T DeLisa landfill, and I think, don't quote me on the dates, but I think it operated from the 1940s to the 1970s, according to records in the reports that I have.
Yeah, I saw the DeLisa name there. That's why I was a little confused. Okay. Just as a side note, when I was a little kid back in the late 60s, we used to dig on that site for old bottles, and I have them dating back to the late 1800s.
Wow.
I still have today, but that's why I wasn't sure if it was just the Lisa or if it was, that being a natural or a real landfill, before the turn of the century.
Yep.
So I wasn't quite sure what you were referring to.
Yep, the reports I have, it's DeLisa, and it operated from around 1945 till 1975.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's reflected in your report, page 1. Is that right?
Correct.
Also on page 2, you go into details about how it was redeveloped in the mid-1970s, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if that was on top of the ones that we used to dig at when we were kids. That's why.
That was the old Sand Hills dump. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you survived, Mr. Ciano, digging among this landfill?
Oh,
Disturbing it? You seem okay. You seem no worse for the wear.
I found bottles with mercury.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question. Mr. Esposito, can you talk about the in our review letter, which references the former engineer review letter that the landfill is not properly closed. Is that something that you will be obtaining with this project or no?
We asked DEP this question. So basically what DEP said to us, they're not even sure if they update that list anymore. And our thought process is that the landfill is capped, properly capped, and it's under the review of an approval of the site remediation program and also solid waste. So DEP is checking we have an email to DEP from a little less than a month ago, and we still haven't heard back from them. But I would make an assessment without their approval that it is properly closed as groundwater, leachate, soil was all characterized and now it wasn't proper closure because it was developed as a landfill prior to the solid waste regulations and was developed into the Seaview Mall. So I could get back to you on that, but it is capped and it is maintained, and the cap is maintained to ensure compliance with DEP regulations.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I also just like to add that I did reach out to the DEP and I spoke with Ron Weinkoski, whose name is on the approval for the minor disruption permit that the applicant obtained for doing the testing that they've been doing. And they did indicate that they are in favor of this project because of the pavement cap is a better cap than the soil that's out there right now. So this is something that they're aware of, that they're in support of with regards to the landfill closure and maintenance. And I agree that it would be a better cap than what's there.
Other questions from the board? Okay, let's open it up to the public. Any questions from the public?
I have a question, Mr. Brown. And it's to Mr. DeFigo's comments and questions earlier. My name is Jack Kearns. I'm a resident of Oakhurst. And I know that you guys have done a lot of detailed explanations of a lot of things that many of them go beyond me. But will the issue that Mr. DeFiglio brought to your attention be specifically addressed as to how you will respond to it on the part of this new development that you'll be doing? Will you specifically address Mr. DeFiglio's stated concern rather than just say that we will adopt it? How will you do that?
Yeah, Mr. Kearns, to try to answer your question, that will be up for the board. Very technically speaking, this is being opened up for questions of Mr. Esposito. If you want to make a request by way of comment and sworn statement later on, you're certainly able to do that. And again, it's up to the determination of the board, what conditions they wish to impose, if they do grant the application. Okay, so do you have any specific questions of Mr. Esposito at this time?
Well, Ms. Quidco also commented about some of the things that Mr. DeFiglio asked about. And as the attorney, and as Mr. Esposito being the on-site right now witness, would that not be included in his environmental logic area?
No,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Brown, if I may. So the applicant is not going to be offering testimony to this board with regard to compliance or non-compliance of the environmental justice law. As was indicated through what Mr. Esposito read, as well as what I offered on behalf of the applicant, if it applies, it is a state regulation of which this board has no jurisdiction. So when we're here before this board for site plan approval, It's with regard to compliance with the site plan ordinance requirements. So again, as typically is done through every application that becomes before this board that requires either a county approval or a state approval, whether it be the DOT or the DEP of the like, the board does not opine as to how we're going to meet those standards. It is typically approved subject to satisfying the outside agency regulations. So what I had indicated and what Mr. Brown had indicated is that if the board votes in favor, a condition that would be imposed is the same that's imposed on every applicant that comes before the board. And that would be compliance with all outside agency regulations. So again, if it applies, we will comply as part of our resolution compliance to seek all outside agency approvals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to amplify that for the benefit of the board, Ms. Krimko, so in terms of the dialogue we had with Mr. Matlock about him looking further into the Environmental Justice Act, is it your opinion that he should not do that, or he has the ability to do that, or something else?
Wait, I'm not, is that a question for me, Sandy? I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
trying to
well,
anticipate what maybe Mr. DeFiglio might ask in relationship to the comments that we had about Mr. Matlock following up on that issue.
Right, so even if the environmental justice law applies, it wouldn't be within the board's purview to enforce it. So again, I think it's appropriately enforced by the state or federal agency under which it is authorized.
So is it fair to say that you would oppose Mr. Matlock giving any opinion on this because it wouldn't be up to a municipal engineer to give any opinion as to the applicability of it? It would have to be brought up at the state level?
I would agree with that. Or federal level, if it is a federal regulation. I think none of us really know at this point.
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree with your opinion. I was asking if I understood you correctly. And whether or not to go back to Mr. Kearns, whether or not the board wants to have a further dialogue on this. Again, if it wants to grant the approval subject to certain conditions, this would be subject of discussion if the board desires.
Well, Mr. Brown, I have a question then, because I want to make sure that I understand this. Our board engineer, part of their obligations to this board is to make sure that the applicants comply with all regulations that may or may not be applying, such as our stormwater regulations and everything else. So
Absolutely.
By making sure that the applicant has sought all necessary approvals that to comply with state laws, and Ms. Krimko, it is a state law, not a federal one, that would still be within his purview to make sure that his approval is conditioned, or the board's approval is conditioned on meeting all requirements. And I flagged this, and the reason I brought it up is one, because again, we've never gone down this particular route. Normally, when we have an application, it will say subject to approval by DOT or subject to approval by DEP. This is a new one. And again, as I noted, I saw no reference to this law, and I'm not even 100% sure. I'd say I'm 80% sure that's applicable, but I don't know. And that is one of the reasons I want to make sure that this is covered in this instance, as it is a new law, and it is the first time that this board is dealing with something in an area of town that has been labeled by DEP as an overburdened community.
And
well, I appreciate those comments, Mr. DeFiglia, and the reason why I tendered my question to Ms. Krimko and said I didn't, I wanted to know what her opinion was. I didn't necessarily agree with it, is because it is unique. I heard what your questions were. I believe that you could ask Mr. Matlock to look into it. I understand Ms. Krimko wouldn't be favorable to that because she just wants the state to determine it independently, I suppose. But I would preliminarily suggest that if Mr. Matlock, let's say, does conclude that it is applicable or should be applicable, then the natural course to me would be that DEP should respond by saying it doesn't apply or it does apply. If it does apply, then then Mr. Matlock should be privy to it. Now, again, I would understand, based on Ms. Krimko's last comment, you wouldn't agree with that, right?
No, you're misstated. So again, you just changed the format of the question. So let me explain what the applicant's position is, because
Okay.
you asked
I didn't mean to
Okay, but
do
you
anything
did.
other than to fine tune the possible difference between your opinion and where I thought that the board could go based on Mr. DeFiglio's concerns. I love that explanation.
Yeah, I think that
Go ahead.
was slightly mischaracterized. So if,
No, it wasn't a mischaracterization. It was my attempt to make sure we have some clarity. So please clarify.
then let me clarify. So again, if Mr. DeFiglia is asking that the board engineer confirm that we are in compliance with the state regulations, then certainly I would agree with Mr. DeFiglia that that is within the board engineer's jurisdiction. Resolution compliance requires compliance with outside agencies. As is always the case, the board engineer makes the determination as to whether or not those outside agency approvals have been fully satisfied. For example, in the past, the board engineer will accept a DOT permit as satisfaction of the DOT review. So again, if the board is asking their board engineer to make sure that in the process of confirming resolution compliance with outside agency approvals, that he confirm that the environmental justice law, if applicable, has been complied with, of course I have no objection to that. What I had an objection to was Mr. Matlock opining independently as to whether or not our plan complies or doesn't comply, in that it is an outside state agency that makes that determination. So we're talking about two entirely different things. So if Mr. DeFiglia's question is that if the board were to vote favorably, that the board engineer be instructed to make sure that amongst our outside agency approvals is compliance with the environmental justice law, if applicable, of course we have no problem with that, because as we said, we're going to comply with all outside agency approvals requirements. Did that clarify that, Mr. DeFiglia?
Yes.
I like that answer too. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Mr. Brockle?
Mr. Esposito, I think there's extensive review of the groundwater, right? You've already done testing, is that correct?
Yes.
Was there also testing of the runoff from that particular site?
Yes, there was. They used to have a leachate system that was operating at the site, but it was determined it didn't need to be operating as part of because there was no leachate coming off the landfill. There was also surface water and sediment samples collected of the water course that appears to be south of, I think, of Ring Road, and there was no impacts identified.
Okay, so there was sampling. There's actually samples and results
Correct.
of those samples. Okay.
Yes.
I assume you plan to do the testing again after the site is built, to see if it's a positive impact or negative impact. Is that correct?
There should be no impact to the water course or from these sites, as the material's already there and water's leaching through it. With the development, one, we're reducing infiltration of groundwater through that landfill material, and that's remaining on the kidney parcel, and it would be the same infiltration on the triangle parcel, so we'd have less of an impact than we currently have right now.
But you could test the water at the same sites you already tested to just make sure that everything's okay, right?
We could, but it wouldn't be required.
It wouldn't be required?
It would not be.
Would you be willing to do it? Just asking.
I'd have to get approval from my client.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Okay.
I just have a statement to make. What we were just discussing about a follow-up test on it, and he'd have to get approval from his client. Obviously, he's not the contractor. Why not? Why couldn't there be a follow-up? They're disturbing the land. They're telling us life is going to be beautiful after it's done. So can't somebody follow up on it?
So again, I believe what the testimony was, Ms. Close, that the state, who's the one who has the authority and who governs all this, and don't jump down my throat, let me finish the sentence. Because I know where it goes when I say it's not within your jurisdiction. So I just want to explain what I'm saying. So the state has jurisdiction over this, and the state regulations do not require further testing. However, if the board were to require it, just that we do a follow-up test to show that there hasn't been any issue, Chris, is that something that we could do?
It could be, samples could be collected, correct.
Okay. And is that a big deal, or is that something that's pretty easy to do?
It's pretty standard. The only concern for groundwater is some of the monitoring wells may have been sealed. I'd have to see which wells remain. I know there are probably a few wells near the.
But we could work, if the board were to require it, we could work with the board engineer to provide post-construction testing to show that the groundwater still remains uncontaminated.
Correct.
I think that's a terrific idea. Why would I jump down your throat, Jennifer?
Well, no, because when I was announcing the first part about it's not really something you guys regulate, but certainly we understand as the stewards of Ocean Township why that would be important to you.
So Ms. Krimko, for the simplicity of the moment, is the applicant offering to do what it may not be required to under DEP and to provide the testing that you were discussing?
What I'm suggesting is that if the board were to condition an approval on us providing testing subject to the satisfaction of the board engineer, that the groundwater was not contaminated post-construction, that is something we could agree to as a condition. Yes.
Thank you.
And I imagine that makes Mr. Brockle very happy as well.
Mr. Chairman, do we have any other questions by board members? Any other questions by any members of the public? Either, both? Mr. Chair? Do we lose our chairman?
Yeah.
Hello?
It seems like his brand new computer is not working well.
Looks like the radio tubes exploded. It is 10:23 for the benefit of the board and the public. Mr. Kirk, I would go to you as our administrator. Do you have any suggestions in light of the fact that it appears our chair is not with us for the moment?
I will ask for a 5-minute break at this point in time, and I will try to get in touch with him.
Okay.
During that 5 minutes. So it is now.
It's 10:23 on my clock.
23. So at 10:28 we'll reconvene.
Right. And again, everybody had the understanding before we started this segment that we would end at 10:30 anyway, but it would be good to see if the chairman can get back on so we can conclude and sum up in the proper fashion.
Are there more testimonies, or was that the last question?
No, there's no more witnesses at this point. Obviously, the public would like the opportunity to speak, and if I recall correctly, at the conclusion of that discussion, Mr. Sienna said we would assess it at 10:30 and go from there. And there's Mr. Sienna on cue.
There we go.
Hello, Mr.
Sienna, please unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. Was it just me? Because all of a sudden Sandy locked up. Okay.
Yeah, it was you. So just to summarize, Ms. Krimko has no further witnesses at this time.
Okay.
I had asked a question whether or not there were any other questions by members of the public or members of the board. And I think that's when you went offline. So I don't know the answer to that question. We also talked about the commentary or discussion about whether or not we conclude at 10:30 or not. So that's 6 minutes from now. So
Okay.
now we go to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I would think at the very least, we should just ask if there are any more questions by members of the public to see if there are any.
Any more questions from the public? The board?
I would like to put it towards the board to include a condition that there's a follow-up test after or post-construction. I think
And that has been stipulated by Ms. Krimko in the record, so that should be an easy one still. You have any other comments at this time, Ms. Close?
No.
All right, so Mr. Chair, going back to you, we're at the point where if Ms. Krimko doesn't have any other witnesses, then we would normally open this up for comments under oath by members of the board. And again, it is now 4 minutes before the 10:30 time frame when we were either going to adjourn or discuss it or whatever the consensus was the last time it came up. There was a confirmation by Ms. Krimko that's certainly up to the discretion of the board to adjourn at 10:30, but you know, that's up for discussion. So now we go back to you, Mr. Chair. It is now 10:26.
Well, if there are no more witnesses, let's open this up. Does anybody want to have any more comments from the board or from the public that wants to go on record? Okay. I take that as a no. Next step here, Sandy, you gotta help me out on the next step. I haven't done this for a couple of years.
Yeah, understood. So now Ms. Krimko would have the opportunity to provide a summation to the board, which would lead us to at least 10:30. And then the final step would be whether or not the board wants to adjourn to consider the vote next time or to extend the process, which is in your full discretion, to actually have a vote tonight.
Okay. Ms. Krimko, you want to?
Well, Mr. Ciano, I just want to confirm because I was a little confused by that. So was this open to the public for public comment? There is no public comment, so you're closing the public portion?
Yes, I am closing the public. Thank you.
Okay. So by way of just very brief summary, we have a scenario where admittedly it's an active shopping center, and it's an active shopping center because of the tremendous investment that the current owner has put into it to bring its vibrance back from a dilapidated vacant center to a thriving one, particularly in light of the fact that shopping centers and retail strips all throughout the state and even in Ocean Township are going dark because of their inability to succeed. You have a property owner who lives in Ocean Township and has invested tremendously in Ocean Township to reinvigorate this center to make it a vibrant and contributing commercial member of the community. And I say that because it's not both with regard to the generation of jobs and the excitement of that end of town, but it also has become a very positive tax rateable. We have the opportunity to have this Amazon retail distribution center come here, which admittedly is a tremendous reduction in overall traffic impact than would be by virtue of having the full area being used as retail. And one of the board members had commented, well, it hasn't been used as retail because retail can't succeed there. Well, I would beg to differ and say that Sears didn't succeed there because Sears wasn't willing to continue to reinvest in Ocean Township and in this site. But when you look throughout the rest of the center, every other portion of that site is vibrant. Importantly, we added tens of thousands of square foot of additional retail in the form of securing Home Goods and Home Sense and Marshalls over from Neptune over to this center. So while I understand that the board members have some concern that the ring road itself is generally busy because it is a publicly served road, what we're proposing has been testified to by 2 experts here already in the field of engineering, that it is safe with regard to site distance, with regard to the ability to make the access across the street. And again, the influx of 24 vans every half an hour in a systematic and organized way is certainly far less of an impact than the individual retail customers driving in and out of a center without any control. So putting all of that aside and what could go here, and I will assure you that if we lose the ability to have Amazon use this because of our inability to accommodate their needs as a new commercial resident of town, a commercial retail use will go in this site, and it won't be Sears who owned it. Now that it's owned again by the owners of the center, it will in fact be additional retail bringing in the associated traffic. Putting all of that aside, aside from the fact that it's a permitted use, aside from the fact that all of the board's professionals have reviewed this and have not taken any exception or expressed any concern whatsoever with regard to safety, nor has our professional, you do have further testimony both from our engineer as well as our LSRP, and as confirmed by your board engineer who confirmed it with DEP, that we have a situation where we have a landfill that the existing cap is insufficient and does not meet the current requirements. And what is being proposed will actually exceed those requirements, in that not only will we have the 2 foot of clean fill in the areas where we are not proposing pavement, but that the pavement is in fact the preferred form of capping, and it is far more effective. And then finally, you have a development that literally has no current stormwater management that complies with any of the stormwater management regulations. And what we are proposing here meets or exceeds all of that and is an improvement over what's existing. So I would offer to you that we have a permitted use. We have some concerns based on lay perception, but none of the board's professionals or the applicant's professionals have raised any concerns. And I would offer that the variances that we are seeking are minimal in nature, and your board planner takes no issue with any of them, so much so that he felt his appearance here was not necessary because he didn't take exception to anything that we're proposing. That was the result of numerous meetings. And finally, we're willing to go above and beyond what is required by the state who regulates all of this, and to say that not only will we meet all of the state regulations, and not only won't we object to the board engineer confirming that we will meet those state regulations, including, and I quote, the environmental justice law, as pointed out to everybody by Mr. DeFiglia, but we are willing to go even that one step further, that post-construction, we will provide monitoring well testing results to ensure to the board engineer satisfaction that in fact we did not create any negative impact on the groundwater. So in light of all of this, and most importantly, in light of the fact that the 2 licensed engineers, that we can comply with any of the concerns that he raised in his report, I would ask that the board vote favorably, allow this center to continue to grow and to bring Amazon to Ocean Township, and create a center that has a balance of different types of uses with different types of traffic patterns that would be the benefit to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, now we're at the point where the board can have discussion. We could start with a proposed resolution to accept or reject. And then we can talk about conditions if the motion is to accept, to approve.
I'll put this out to the board. Is the board ready to make a decision and approve this?
Why not?
Do you have
No.
Any comment?
I think this is a ill-conceived plan. I don't believe it's safe in anything that she's proposing. You know, it's you know, she brought a bunch of engineers here that obviously know a lot more than us, but we're just lay people, and she needs our votes. So she's obviously going to tell you everything you want to hear about it, that it's in a positive manner. This is going to be one I told you so. Traffic, congestion, craziness, it's unsafe. So that's my 2 cents. That's where I stand. I would encourage the board to deny.
Any other
So
comments?
procedural, yeah, the question again would be, unless there are any other general comments, does someone want to offer a motion to either reject the application along the lines?
I'm sorry, John, I missed that last thing that you said, John. What were you saying? What were you proposing?
No. Oh, I was just saying that we shouldn't do a positive resolution, that they should have to come back with some better plans of something that's more safe and that's more amenable over there. I still don't understand why they're disrupting something. I don't really find it necessary. I think they have more than enough space over there to accommodate the things that they would like. And I don't think it, like I said, it's safety. This just seems like a safety problem waiting to happen.
When you're talking about safety, you're talking about the traffic, right?
Traffic, people, I mean, everything.
So,
I mean,
Mr.
we
Chair,
do not have to approve it.
So, Mr. Chair, again, procedurally, we would ask one of the members to either offer a motion to approve or a motion to reject.
Sandy, can I make a comment before we get to that point?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So, you know, I've listened to this testimony. I agree that I don't love that ring road, but this is a potential win for the township. There is a lot of jobs that will be created from this. You remember, you've got an old, dilapidated building that was doing nothing. It's been sitting there for a long time. Now you've got a potential use that it really is a win for the town. I think you have to understand this is more of a delivery business versus this is not a retail shopping center. I do agree with John that I do have some concerns about people coming around, but you know, hopefully it's a shift type of work. And I think that there is the benefits will outweigh. At the end of the day, all we're really doing is creating a parking lot at the end of the day. So that's just my opinion.
I mean, let's be frank. This is the purpose of this business, is the reason that mall is empty. So they're essentially replacing what they've done in the mall with something that essentially put it out of business. And
Now, that's
I think it's admirable for the
Wait a second, Ms.
for the town to.
This is for.
I
this
think
is
it's
not for
admirable for
dialogue
the
with
town
Dr.
who wants to try to bring in some jobs, and I think it's very admirable that, you know, they're trying to do something with a dilapidated retail space. But I have very serious reservations about how this is coming together. And I think, you know, there's a lot of very smart people on this call, and I think that people could put their heads together and come up with a lot better plan than what is being proposed tonight.
Mr. Chairman?
Well, I heard a couple of other people speaking. Was it you, Ms. Krimko, or?
Yeah.
No, wait a second now. This
Well,
is
yeah,
not
I don't
the
think, I
time-
don't, yeah, I don't, yeah, I don't
This
think I
is
want
not the
to.
time for objectors.
Oh, okay.
Opponents. This is just for dialogue with the board right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think John does. I think, you know, what Dave was saying, you know, he has a thread. You know, Dave, you have a thread of like, this doesn't sound great. Right. I think we have to, you know, to some extent, I don't know if we're supposed to evaluate it on the business aspects. I think we're supposed to evaluate it on the, the purview for us is safety and how it melts into the community and those kind of things, right? I don't know how.
Yeah, I can give you some generalities on that. The board does look at issues that you alluded to, Jeff. In terms of profitability or the like, respectfully, it's a permitted use that's accepted. This is not a use variance case. It's not about profit margins. This is about compliance with site plan standards. It's about whether or not the proposed variances and design waivers should be granted.
But again, I'm trying to reopen the case to adjourn it, Sandy. So again, Mr. Chair, you have the discretion, Mr. Chair, not Sandy, to recognize me. So, Mr. Chair, I'm asking to be recognized for the purpose of requesting an adjournment.
Right,
so we
that's
can.
Okay. That's different. All right.
But I wasn't allowed to speak, so I wasn't able to say that.
Great.
Okay, go ahead and speak, Ms. Krimko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I hear the concerns of Mr. Duffy. Well, I don't agree with him. It sounds to me that at least some of the board members are swayed by what he has offered, or what he has expressed as his concern. So what I would ask for is an adjournment to allow us to bring a traffic engineer, an expert in this field, to talk about the safety of what we are proposing, the impact of the existing conditions, and to satisfy the board and Mr. Duffy that we will not be creating a nightmare.
Just so you know, it's just not him. I think everybody, I think all of us are a little bit.
And that's what I indicated, Jeff, that it was originally just Mr. Duffy, and then I heard the other board members also express their concerns, which is why I'd like the opportunity to present traffic testimony to you to assuage those concerns.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Right, and part of that, do you think you're also asking the traffic people, the traffic expert, to look at how? Do you think it's just explaining to us in a different way, or do you think they're looking at how to solve the queasiness we might have around it?
Well, I think it's both, and again, to the extent that they have experience in traffic, the two engineers looked at this and felt that it was safe. I would like an engineer, a traffic engineer, to be able to present to you the anticipated trips, what the existing conditions are, and whether or not it is safe. And I think that it's important also that I reopen this for the purpose of stating that this is not a dark site. Sears closed throughout the entirety of New Jersey. So we're not putting Amazon here to fix.
I don't think that matters at that. Yeah.
Respectfully, this is not the time to have an extensive dialogue on this, but let me go to.
I requested an adjournment.
All right, I'm going to address the procedure of it, Ms. Krimko, okay? So, Mr. Chair, this is a discretionary call. The applicant closed this case. She indicated that she was standing on the testimony. She started to hear comments after the hearing was closed. And now, apparently because of concerns expressed, she is requesting that the closing of the hearing be reopened. And it is up to you to decide if you want to agree or not. And if you do agree, then that means that it would be reopened. There would be additional dialogue, if you will, between the professionals of the board after this traffic report is provided, and whether or not a new date would be set at this time would be another issue. If it's your determination, you would like to, in your discretion, reopen this. Mr. Chair.
After hearing all the comments from everybody on the board and also from the public, I think we should adjourn this and revisit this at the next meeting with the planning board. I think there's some issues here that we need to hear about. I think everybody brought up very, very good reasons and some concerns. And I think that if we can put those together and clarify them, I think that'll give us a better understanding if we're going to move forward with this or not. So
Very
I
good. So-
am regretting adjourning this and doing this at possibly the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, again, from a procedural point of view, I think you should have a motion offered to reopen the hearing based on the request by the applicants. Request.
Can we have a discussion before the motion or after the motion?
You can have a discussion before you vote. Yes.
Okay. So the reason we're doing this is because the way I'm reading this is that, as far as the application goes and as far as what they put forward, it might, we want to refine it so that we feel it's that everything is more, that we're more satisfied with the plan itself, that we're not satisfied with the plan, that we're trying to give the applicant a chance to, before we vote, to help us be more satisfied. Is that a fair way to say? Is that a fair way to say it?
It is on the applicant's part, Mr. Weinstein.
Yeah. Is that Dave? Is that what Dave and John and Pete? Is that what you're thinking?
I agree with you there. There's some things that I felt that are still a little with some unanswered questions, and maybe we need some more definitive answers. So that's why I will make the motion to see if we can adjourn this and
because we're trying to tighten it up to
Absolutely.
make it work, so they can make it work better for us. Is that how you're seeing it, John?
I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't understand why we're giving them.
Because it is for the, because it is. Like I just to be honest, it's like, it is for the. I'm seeing the problems we're anticipating, right? Their answers to what we were anticipating. I'm not sure we're actually accurate. I think that, I like us to get all the unknowns out of the way and actually make it tighter, because that would make us feel better about going ahead with it. Because I also do agree that as far as that mall is concerned, and that outdoor mall, that Dave is right. It's probably a good thing for the community. It's probably a good thing for the town. Having it, if we thought it was going to be incredibly safe, I'm not sure if we would be asking for that, the adjournment, right? So I think I want to take the corollary which is that we want them to make it safer, make us feel better. So if they come forward with that, we can say to ourselves, okay, this makes a lot of sense. That's what I'm trying to think through, is that's what we're trying to do. I mean, Dave, is that what you're thinking, or is that?
You make some great points, and I stand by my statement. And if the board needs more clarification, then now's the time.
Mr. Chair, I go back to the procedure. So we were at the point where we were having a vote. There's a request to reopen because there's going to be additional testimony. That should be the motion voted on, whether or not to agree to the request to reopen, and then we can talk about whether or not we want to set a date to come back or do that at another time. But I suggest we have that motion voted on, a motion to reopen.
I believe Mr. Siano made a motion at that, and that was where it left, that there was no second yet.
I'll second the motion.
Any other comments before we ask for a roll call vote? Mr. Chairman, then should we ask for a roll call vote from Amy?
Vote, Amy.
Okay. Mr. DeFilia,
Yes.
Mr. Duffy,
No.
Dr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Close,
Yes.
Mr. Siano,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
So that passes. The vote is to reopen for additional testimony after submittal of what Ms. Krimko indicated and then processing by our staff. In light of the issue of timing of all this, I am asking an open question, and I'll ask Mr. Kirk whether or not we should not set a date to come back because of the unknown time frame. But
I believe that we set it for the next meeting without notice, and then we will assess with Ms. Krimko and her client as to how far their experts have gotten to that point.
When is the next meeting, Mr. Kirk?
I'll have to ask Amy.
The 23rd.
23rd of August.
Yes.
So in light of the fact that a traffic report is going to be submitted, which must be reviewed.
Not necessarily, Mr. Brown. I'd indicated I was going to bring a traffic expert to the hearing to testify. I did not indicate I'd be submitting a report in advance. We may be ready by that date.
Okay.
So
Mr. Chair, you heard the recommendation of Mr. Kirk. Are you amenable to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a reason why you're not presenting a report? I'm just, like we get paperwork on everything else. I'm just curious.
I didn't say that we were or we weren't. I just said that when I asked for the adjournment.
Well, no, you just indicated that you weren't going to have a report, so you'd be ready. That's what
that isn't. I said we didn't indicate we were submitting a report and we may be ready by that date, I believe is exactly what I said. So all I'm asking is that we carry it to the meeting of August 23rd without the need for further notice. And if we are ready to proceed, because the applicant is choosing not to submit a report, then we proceed. And if we are making changes to the plans as a result of the traffic engineer's input and/or want to submit a report, then I would coordinate that with Mr. Kirk and be prepared to present that the night of the 23rd.
And all that obviously is in conjunction with the fact that we deal with the 10-day rule and the engineer has to have time to look at any reports, if any, being submitted, but that's just for the general benefit of comment to the board. Ms. Krimko is well aware of that, as are her experts. So again, going back to Mr. Kirk, he is making that recommendation to the chair. Ms. Krimko has asked that it be continued pending other developments. There would not be any notice. Mr. Chairman, are you amenable to that?
Yes.
Any other comments on that point? All right, hearing none, then I believe we're at the end of the hearing. This again is a special meeting, so we have no other applications. Ms. Krimko, thank you very much for your appearance and for testimony from your experts. Thanks to the members of the public for their comments. Again, absent any more information, this will continue as you just heard, August 24th. Is that right, Amy?
23rd.
23rd.
Sorry, 23rd. Okay. 23rd, which is the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Ocean Township Planning Board. Mr. Chairman, back to you, and I would go
make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe I heard unanimity in terms of that vote. Have a good evening.